She was obstinate and unruly. Yet, Lu Laoshi forgave her and solved the pill poison that was plaguing her, guided her on her cultivation, and even imparted her a formidable saber art. He was her benefactor. She wanted to repay her teacher by earning him honor. Yet she ended up sullying his reputation instead. Despite that, he didn't give up on her. Worried that she would be wounded, he even dashed onto the stage to save her. "Teacher, thank you. Teacher, please pardon Qing'er for causing you trouble. Teacher, I'll never do it again." Mu Xueqing clenched her fists tightly. The teacher before her may be young, but his existence felt like a humongous mountain, a reliable figure which she could fall back on, giving her an aim in life and allowing her to charge forward fearlessly. It was because of him that she was motivated to train hard and grow stronger. Just as Zhao Ye was conflicted over whether she should slice all the way down, a figure appeared right between her sword and Mu Xueqing. It was a 24 to 25-year-old young man with a slightly yellowish complexion. Voila! Under the momentary shock from the sudden appearance of the other party, she failed to stop her sword in that crucial moment, and it continued to fall straight down. The young man frowned. Stretching out his hand, he bent his middle finger and flicked it lightly. Wang! As the tip of his finger came into contact with the sword, Zhao Ye suddenly felt a surge of pain in the area between her thumb and her forefinger, causing her grip to loosen. The sword immediately broke into two before flying straight out of her hand. Dang 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 dang. Retreating 2 steps, Zhao Ye immediately adjusted her chaotic breathing. Fearful that the other party would attack her once more, she kept her guard up. Fortunately, it seemed like the other party only intended to flick away her sword. It was only due to the immense force of her slash that resulted in the sword breaking abruptly when coming in contact with the other party's finger. Incredible! Her eyes narrowed. It was an attack with the full might of her physical constitution behind it, and the strength behind the slash was so great that even she was losing control of her movements. Yet, the other party, with just a single finger, neutralized her attack without hurting her in the least. The eye of discernment and precise movements required for this feat were completely unimaginable. In fact, she would have never believed it to be possible if not for the fact she had just witnessed it. "May I know why Elder is interfering in our fight?" Even though Zhao Ye was astonished by the sudden turn of events, she didn't panic. Clasping her fist politely, she spoke impassively. Her attitude was neither subservient nor arrogant. "You two are really preposterous." Flinging his sleeves, Zhang Xian bellowed furiously. He was truly dismal by the actions of his 2 students. Of countless people in Tianwu Royal City, you two just had to fight with one another. Despite being under different personas, the both of you are my students. Is there really a need for you two to compete with one another like that? I imparted one of you a sword art and the other a saber art, but the both of you simply ended up using them to hack at one another. The heck? You call this vying for honor for me? Clearly, you are trying to destroy my reputation. That explains the bizarre expression on Mou's face when she said that she was going to bring me to a good show. The heck, this truly is an incredible show. You must be Lu Laoshi. Having guessed the identity of the young man before her, Zhao Ye walked forward with a look of determination on her beautiful face. Your students have insulted my teacher, and to defend the honor of my teacher, I challenged her to a fair duel. Why would you speak of our actions as preposterous? Zhang Xian was taken aback. It wouldn't have been wrong for Zhang Xian to reprimand his own students for acting preposterously, but in his persona as Lu Laoshi, that would be equivalent to making light of the other party's actions. It was one thing for him, as a teacher, to hinder a fight among students. Yet, on top of that, he even said that the other party was acting preposterously. If this wasn't being unreasonable, what else could this be? So it is right for your student to hit me, but if I do the same, I am acting preposterously. Enough, let's stop this matter here. You should return. Not expecting to be questioned by his own student in this persona, Zhang Xian suddenly felt his head hurt. He really couldn't have imagined that such a farce would occur. If only he had paid these two ladies a little more attention, he could have avoided this embarrassing misunderstanding. Return? Why should we return? Mu Xueqing has clearly lost the duel, so she should fulfill the end of her bet and apologize at this very instant and admit that you are inferior to our Zhangshi. Otherwise, even if we have to cause a ruckus at the teacher guild or even the master-teacher pavilion, we won't back down. Bellowing furiously, Zheng Yang jumped onto the stage and glared furiously at Zhang Xian. This time, he was truly angered. How can a respectable teacher like you blatantly side with your own student in public? It is one thing for you to stop the duel as soon as you see that your student is falling in defeat, but to say that we are acting preposterously and declare that this matter will stop here like that. I have seen shameless people, but you are truly one of kind. As a teacher, are you going shamelessly refuse to admit defeat? Indeed. We've already agreed on it before the duel. Could it be that you are going against your words? A loss means a loss. As a teacher, you should at least have some dignity. Shameless. Yuan Tao, Lu Yang, and the others charged up and bellowed at Zhang Xian furiously. The reason why I've lost is because of my own inability. It has nothing to do with teacher. Upon seeing her teacher being doubted by others, Mu Xueqing stepped forward. She had intended to vie honor for her own teacher, never in her dreams did she expect her actions put him in such an awkward position instead. Clenching her jaws tightly together, she said, I'll apologize, but it'll only be in my capacity as an individual. It doesn't mean that my teacher is inferior to your Zhangshi. What do you mean by that? After all that has been said, you're simply refusing to admit defeat. Surely you should remember the words you uttered so arrogantly 3 days ago. Are you trying to avoid fulfilling the end of the agreement now that you've lost? Zheng Yang glared at Mu Xueqing coldly. 3 days ago, you arrogantly declared that Zhang Shi is inferior to Lu Laoshi, and proposed for the loser of the duel to admit that their own teacher is inferior to the others. How could you simply disregard your words now? Do you think that we're easy targets to bully? Apologize immediately and admit that Lu Laoshi is inferior to Zhang Shi, and we'll end things here. Otherwise, don't blame me for getting nasty. Lu Yang stepped forward. Mu Xueqing's face steeled. If she were to admit to this matter here, how was Lu Laoshi supposed to face others and build his prestige in the academy? Enough. Seeing how the few rascals were trying to force their own teacher into a corner, Zhang Xian felt even more dismal. We'll just take the duel today as a draw. You can return now. He had never seen them getting so motivated in other matters. For his own students to pressure his other students to admit that he was inferior to himself, what in the world was this? Draw? Why should we accept it as a draw? After hearing those words, Zheng Yang and the others immediately erupted. Even Zhao Ye, who was usually the most rational one of the group, couldn't help but darken her face at those words. How could a person say those words unabashed? It was obvious that the other party had lost. It was one thing for the other party to not fulfill their end of their promise, but how dare they brazenly claim that it was a draw? Initially, they were still impressed by Lu Laoshi's ability in inducing such massive growth in his student and thought that he was a true genius worthy of respect. But from the looks of it now, the word genius seemed to be completely wasted on him. How could a person who doesn't even dare to admit his defeat be considered a genius? How could a person who pulled his seniority to twist the truth be considered a genius? Do you think that you're really a big shot? To put an act before us, why don't you try your luck somewhere else? You should at least try to retain the final shreds of your dignity. Zhao Ye didn't win, and Mu Xueqing didn't lose either. What else can this be if not a draw? Stop causing a commotion here and return. Otherwise, I will tell your teacher to teach you a lesson. Zhang Xian shook his hands. He had no other choice but to announce it as a draw. If he said that Zhao Ye had won, wouldn't that mean that he, in his persona as Lu Cheng, was inferior to Zhang Xian? When his identity finally gets exposed, he would really die of embarrassment. On the other hand, if you were to claim that Mu Xueqing had won, wouldn't that mean that Zhang Xian was inferior to Lu Laoshi? The consequences were the same. What in the world was this? No matter what he said, he would be the one to take the bullet. Instead of going through so much trouble, he might as well throw these rascals out first. Not expecting this Lu Laoshi to act so shamelessly, not admitting to the defeat of his student despite clearly losing, even going to the extent of acting so brazenly about it, Zhao Ye and the others were on the verge of erupting. This truly isn't a wise move on Lu Laoshi's part. Principal Xia and the others shook their heads. He shouldn't have interfered. What in the world is a teacher like him interfering in a fight between the students for? Another elder harumphed. Even so, if he didn't stop the duel just now, Mu Xueqing would definitely be severely injured. As a teacher, he couldn't simply watch idly from the side as his students got injured. Principal Xie replied. That's true, the crowd nodded. On top of guiding them, teachers had a responsibility to protect their students from harm as well before they mature. If they were in Lu Laoshi's place, they would surely be unable to remain idle too if their students were getting injured right before them. The academy is in a difficult position now. If it were to help Lu Laoshi, Zhang Shi will be dissatisfied. However, if we help Zhang Shi, Lu Laoshi will be angered. What makes things even more difficult is that Lu Laoshi is no ordinary teacher. Not to mention, he's the guild leader of the physician guild as well. Helping one side would simply bring the academy the ire of the other. But if we were to wash our hands clean and stay out of the matter, we would risk angering the both simultaneously. After all, we simply watched idly as this duel went on. Principal Xia rubbed his glabella in distress. This matter had truly left him with a splitting headache. A while ago, he was just excitedly thinking that regardless of which of the two ladies won, Tianwu Academy would stand to win. He couldn't have imagined that the things would get to this point. With this turn of events, the entire academy was put into a difficult position. If it comes down at principal, why don't you step out and invite Zhang Shi and Lu Laoshi to sit down together and get to know one another? After all, given that they're both geniuses, there is a good chance that they might just find fellowship in one another through this. An elder proposed. Principal Xia contemplated over the matter. It's not a bad idea, but Zhang Shi is currently in the midst of taking his 2-star master teacher examination and isn't in the capital now. If he were to know of the conflict and refuse the meeting, what should we do? Another elder asked. It was a good method to solve the conflict by having the both of them sit down and talk things out. However, the problem lies in getting them to do so. Lu Laoshi was a teacher of their academy, so at the very least, he wouldn't blatantly turn down the principal's instructions. However, Zhang Shi was a 2-star master teacher, and his standing was superior to even that of the principal. If he were to refuse to meet Lu Laoshi, then all of the plans they had prepared beforehand would be for naught. Forget it. I'll just to plead with Zhang Shi on this matter. At the very least, I am still a 1-star master teacher and the principal of Tianwu Academy. Zhang Shi should probably sell me this favor. After hesitating for a moment, Principal Xia shook his head. Also, prepare a few of the academy's esteemed guest token. I want to give them to Zhang Shi's students so that they can freely enter the academy and browse through our books or any other resources. Yes. The elders nodded in agreement. Below, Mou, who initially intended to watch the commotion from below, was completely dumbfounded. She thought that it would interesting see the students of Zhang Xian under 2 different identities of his fight one another. However, she didn't expect things to evolve to this point. Zhang Xian was put in an extremely awkward position with this. Regardless of which side wins, his reputation would be tarnished. I have to stop them. At this, she pushed aside the crowd and walked up. Zhao Ye, Zhenyang, Mo Shi. Just as Zhao Ye and the others were burning with anger, they heard someone calling them, and turning around, they saw Princess Mou. Teacher had once taught her, so in a sense, they could be considered as fellow peers. They had met her back when their teacher was taking the master teacher examination. Why don't you all return for now? If Zhang Shi were to know that you all are causing a ruckus at Tianwu Academy, he would surely be displeased. Nodding her head, Mou tried to persuade them. If not for her selfish motives, Zhang Xian might have learned of this matter in advance, and things wouldn't have gotten so troublesome. Hearing those words, Zhao Ye and the others glanced at one another and hesitated. Even though they hadn't spent much time with Zhang Shi, they knew that he disliked trouble. If he were to know that they had caused a huge ruckus at Tianwu Academy, even almost turning against one of the teachers here, he would surely be displeased. But how could they quell the anger in their hearts if they were to leave just like this? Mo Shi, since you are a master teacher, please give your judgment on this matter. In this duel, if not for Lu Laoshi interfering, Mu Xueqing would have surely lost. It is one thing for them not to fulfill their end of their bargain, but how could they actually claim that it is a draw? Zheng Yang complained angrily. All right. Regardless of the situation, Lu Laoshi is still a teacher, so spare him some pride. As for Zhang Shi, I'll explain this matter to him so that he won't blame you for this. Hearing the other party's furious complaints, Mou was afraid that it would be even harder to resolve the matter if left to be. Thus, she hurriedly sent a telepathic message to them. We'll be depending on Mo Shi then. Zheng Yang wasn't willing to give up yet, but Zhao Ye interrupted him. Mou nodded. Turning to Zhang Xian, Zhao Ye spoke, Lu Laoshi, the only reason why I'm addressing you as a teacher is out of respect for Tianwu Academy. Since you claim that it's a draw today, so be it. However, Mu Xueqing, I challenge you to another duel 3 days later. Do you dare to accept it? Why wouldn't I dare to? Mu Xueqing gritted her teeth. Good. I hope that Lu Laoshi won't interfere in the duel 3 days later. I also hope that you can fulfill the end of your bargain if you lose. Flinging her sleeves, Zhao Ye turned to Mou and clasped her fist. Mo Shi, I'll be taking my leave. After which, she shot Zhang Xian a cold glare before leading the group out. Not only did Zhang Xian's interference fail to settle their conflict, he even inadvertently encouraged a third duel between them. On top of that, he even ended up being hated by his own students. Rubbing his glabella, bitterness appeared on Zhang Xian's face. What in the world was this? I didn't even do anything. Why didn't you warn me beforehand? Dismayed, Zhang Xian turned to Mou. Mou's face flushed. It was just a conflict between students, so she didn't think much of it. She never expected it to blow up like this and create such an awkward atmosphere. Stumped, she hurriedly rummaged through her mind for an excuse and replied, actually, this isn't as bad as it seems. With a short-term target in their mind, they will cultivate diligently. Look, Zhao Ye and Mu Xueqing improved immensely over the past 3 days. She intended for these words to just dissipate the awkward situation, but it caused Zhang Xian to freeze momentarily instead. She was right. With this rivalry between them two, they would be motivated to give their all in their training, thus inducing rapid progress in the both of them. Even though the sword art and the saber art Zhang Xian had imparted them was a simplified version tailored for them, still, it should have taken them a minimum of 10 days to master those techniques and comprehend sword intent and saber intent respectively. Yet, they succeeded in just a short span of 2 days. This reflected how diligent they were in their training. More importantly, through this experience, Mu Xueqing's trust level in him would increase rapidly. Alright, let's see how it goes then. Make sure you don't accidentally reveal my identity to Zhao Ye and the others. Eventually, Zhang Xian decided to simply think on the bright side. What was done, and no amount of complaint could reverse time. After all, he couldn't possibly go around declaring that Lu Cheng was Zhang Xian, and that Mu Xueqing and Zhao Ye were actually under the same teacher. If he were to do so, he would immediately fail his 2-star master teacher examination. Teacher, I'm sorry. Mu Xueqing walked up and apologized remorsefully. Zhang Xian shook his head. Just as he was about to console the other party, an elder pushed through the crowd and yelled, which elder displayed the saber intent just a moment ago. Please accept me as your student. I am Bai Xian, and my comprehension of saber has already reached an extremely high level. I definitely will not bring shame to your name, Zhang Xian and Mu Xueqing. MOU. The crowd. Damn it. Damn it. On the way back to the residence, the faces of Zheng Yang and the others were so livid that a dark aura seemed to be glooming around them. Recalling the vile words that Lu Laoshi spoke, the fury in them blazed up once more. Xiaoye, why did you stop me? Honestly, if not for you, I would have surely applied for the teacher dueling platform. Zheng Yang harumphed. Teacher dueling platform? That Lu Laoshi managed to neutralize my offense with just a single finger. To be capable of such a feat, his eye of discernment and grasp over timing might not even be beneath that of Zhang Shi. Even if he were to suppress his cultivation, we wouldn't be a match for him. Xiaoye shook his head. So what if we aren't a match for him? It's clear that he's stepping over us. The results are so clear, and yet, he still dared to announce the result of the duel as a draw. How could he side with his student so blatantly? It's my first time seeing such a shameless teacher. Even if I can't win against him, I must at least teach him a lesson. Zheng Yang gritted his teeth furiously. Zheng Yang is right. Even if we can't match up to him, we should at least make things difficult for him. Yuan Tao fanned the flames from the side. Enough. This Lu Laoshi might be shameless, but he indeed possesses true capability. If not for my physical constitution and the sword art grand teacher imparted, I would surely have been the one to lose the duel. The urgent matter at hand is not to insult him but find a way to raise my cultivation instead. If we were to lose the duel 3 days from now, we'll be the ones that are humiliated. Xiaoye interjected between the furious bellows of the duo. That's right, the group nodded in agreement. Given the previous situation, it was necessary for them to issue another duel. If they simply allowed such provocation to go unchallenged, Zhang Shi's reputation might be sullied. However, to be able to induce growth comparable to Xiaoye in the past 3 days, they had to admit that Lu Laoshi indeed possessed fearsome capability. Given that Zhang Shi wasn't in the city presently, they were at a huge disadvantage. If Xiaoye were to lose, nothing they said would matter. Since Zhang Shi isn't around, we can only plead with Grand Teacher to help us. The rest of you must also cultivate diligently in the next few days. If the other party loses and refuses to admit defeat once more, we'll challenge Lu Laoshi to the teacher dueling platform and show him that Zhang Shi's honor isn't something that he could simply trample on. Flinging her hands valiantly, Xiaoye's eyes gleamed with determination. If the circumstances are right, Xiaoye won't hesitate to cause trouble. Just the fact that she was the very first one to step forward upon hearing someone say that Zhang Shi was inferior to Lu Laoshi was a testimony to that. She could forgive the other party for acting shamelessly this once, but if he were to continue on with such an attitude, he shouldn't blame her for getting nasty on him. They were willing to beat up Lu Sun Laoshi in Tianxian Kingdom, and they didn't mind doing it once more for that Lu Laoshi. Good, I've been waiting for these words of yours, Zheng Yang nodded before turning to Wang Ying, Yuan Tao, and the others. How is it? If that Lu Laoshi continues to act so shamelessly, are you guys willing to blow things up? Do you think that I'll be scared? What Lu Laoshi? Screw him. Yuan Tao bellowed. I won't back down so easily the next time. Lu Yang nodded. Count me in. Determination gleamed in Wang Ying's eyes. All right, it's a promise then. After discussing the matter, they felt their mood lighten. Walking toward the residence, they suddenly saw 2 figures standing at the entrance. May I trouble you to report to Physician Bai that an acquaintance from Red Lotus City is here to pay his respects? A person who seemed to be a butler said to the guards standing at the entrance of the residence. Yes. Upon hearing that they were Physician Bai's acquaintances, the guard hesitated for a moment before heading inside. Soon, he came out with Physician Bai behind him. Physician Bai, we meet once more. Upon seeing Bai Chan, the duo was elated. Bai Chan, on the other hand, was confused. You two are, Seeing that the other party didn't recognize them, the duo was perplexed. The butler-like person stood forward and asked, "Physician Bai, I am Butler Lu. This is my old master, the great Herb King. Did you forget about us?" The two were Red Lotus City's great Herb King and Butler Lu. After the incident in the Poison Hall, the great Herb King found himself being highly respected as the friend of the envoy's senior granduncle. Naturally, no one dared to feed him the contract goo once more. Other people might not know the true identity of the envoy's senior granduncle, but the great Herb King knew that he was Tianwu Royal City's physician by Chong. He happened to have some business in the capital, so he brought Butler Lu to pay the other party a visit so as to touch up on their relationship. As a celebrity in the capital and someone who had managed to leap on board Master Teacher Zhang Xian's ship, it wasn't too difficult to trace Bai Chan's whereabouts. It didn't take them too long to come to this residence. Just that, why didn't the other party recognize them? The great Herb King. Bai Chan shuddered. The only reason why he was respected in the capital was because Zhang Shi had treated the great Herb King while disguising as him. He could have never imagined that a person of such esteemed standing would actually pay him a visit. "Great Herb King, the one who saved you wasn't me. It was Zhang Shi." The matter went like this, without hiding anything, Bai Chan explained the entire matter. "So it's Zhang Shi who saved me. May I know where he is now? Is it convenient for me to pay him a visit?" Upon hearing the situation, the great Herb King and Butler Lu were stunned. However, they received swiftly. This matter wasn't too difficult for them to accept. After all, the great Herb King had personally witnessed Zhang Xian's ability to alter his appearance. It wasn't inconceivable for him to have disguised as someone else back then. Zhang Shi is currently in the midst of taking the 2-star Master Teacher examination, so he isn't in the residence at the moment. Halfway through his words, Bai Chan suddenly noticed Zhao Ye and the others walking over, and hurriedly introduced them. "These are Zhang Shi's students. If you have any words you wish to relay to Zhang Shi, feel free to tell them." Zhang Shi's students? The great Herb King and Butler Lu hurriedly clasped their fists respectfully. Zhang Shi was the envoy's senior granduncle, and just that standing in itself was sufficient to crush them. While his students were still young, the duo didn't dare to disrespect them. The great Herb King. Upon hearing the introduction, Zhao Ye and the others were astonished. The Red Lotus City's great Herb King. On their way to Tianwu Kingdom, Lu Shi had explained the various power within Tianwu Kingdom, and as such, they had a brief idea of the great Herb King's standing and influence. To think that even such a person would act so respectfully to their teacher as well. "Our teacher is currently out at the moment, and he'll only return 5 to 6 days later. May I know what the great Herb King has for our teacher? We can relay your message to him in your stead once he returns." Zhao Ye said. "Oh, it's nothing much. We just happened to be passing by Tianwu Royal City, so we thought of dropping by to pay our respects to him." Upon hearing that Zhang Xian wasn't around, the great Herb King was slightly disappointed. "Since Zhang Shi isn't around, we'll be taking our leave then." "Wait a moment," Yuan Tao hurried forward and looked at them with a curious expression. "I heard that you've an extremely close relationship with the Poison Hall. May I know if you have any poison on you?" This, not expecting the other party to ask such a straightforward question, the great Herb King chuckled awkwardly. "I do have some." "Then, do you have any poison that will cause a Tongxian realm expert to suffer without causing any permanent damage?" "I would like to buy some." Yuan Tao's eyes lit up. "A poison that will cause a Tongxian realm expert to suffer without causing any permanent damage?" The great Herb King didn't know what the other party wanted such a poison for, but considering the fact that the other party was the student of Zhang Shi, he nodded. "I do have such poison. If you want it, I can give them to you. However, you must be careful with it. This poison is extremely potent. Even a Zongshi realm expert will suffer greatly if he were to accidentally ingest it." With a flick of his hands, a jade bottle appeared in his hands. Raise my cultivation. Mu Xueqing's face immediately turned bitter. If it was that easy to raise a person's cultivation, there wouldn't be so little experts in the world. This was especially so when one had reached Pixue realm. One had to examine every single acupoint carefully before opening it. As such, the opening of each acupoint often required several weeks of studying. In 3 days it was unlikely that she could get significantly stronger. If it is anyone else, they might not be able to grow much stronger in just 3 days. However, you're different. Seeing the gloom on the other party's face, Zhang Xian smiled. You've consumed pills from young, and even though it had accumulated pill poison in your body, some medicinal energy had also been stored within you. If this medicinal energy can be triggered through some unique method, it won't be difficult for your cultivation to rise swiftly. Zhang Xian said. On the way here, Zhang Xian had already thought about how he could raise Mu Xueqing's strength. Mu Xueqing had been consuming pills from young. Just like fats in the body, a huge reserve of medicinal energy which she was unable to digest had settled inside her body. If this medicinal energy reserve could be triggered, her cultivation would surely be able to rise swiftly. This teacher is able to do so. Mu Xueqing was taken aback. Even though her teacher had phrased the matter simply, having come from a family with an apothecary background, she knew the difficulty of the matter. Needless to say, her father, even the guild leader of the Apothecary Guild, would be incapable of this feat. The powerful medicinal energy of a pill was somewhat similar to fats, whereby there was a limit to how much medicinal energy a human body can absorb each time. After which, the excess would settle down and be stored in parts of the body. Under normal circumstances, this accumulated energy would slowly dissolve as one's cultivation was raised. However, the process would take several decades. To trigger the medicinal energy that had settled in her body in just 3 days to achieve a breakthrough in her cultivation, how was that possible? I am capable of it. However, you'll have to prepare some things in advance. Zhang Xian hesitated for a moment. The medicinal energy would hide in different locations depending on a cultivator's physical constitution and cultivation technique. Thus, it would be impossible for anyone else to locate them and trigger them. However, Zhang Xian was different. Possessing the Library of Heaven's Path, he could see the locations of these medicinal energy deposits clearly. After pinpointing them, all he had to do was to trigger them with his pure Heaven's Path Zhenqi and transform them into a source for energy to raise Mu Xueqing's cultivation. However, if so much energy were to be released at once, it would be like the fierce torrents from a floodgate that had been opened. If it was Lu Chong, given his mental fortitude, he would surely be able to tide through the agony. However, the same could not be said about Mu Xueqing. Being born in a good family that provided her with large amounts of external support, giving her a significant head start, she wasn't as motivated as others in her cultivation. Moreover, if she were to fail to endure this torrent of energy, it would be one thing to miss the good opportunity, but she might even suffer severe irreparable internal injuries. Thus, some preparation had to be made beforehand. She would have to nourish and increase her endurance level with some medicinal solution. Condition your body and wait for me here. I'll take a short trip to the Apothecary Guild. After a short moment of contemplation, Zhang Xian instructed. The kind of medicinal solution required was similar to the one he previously gave Wang Ying, and only the Apothecary Guild would possess such material. The Apothecary Guild? Teacher, why don't I go with you? My father is a 2-star apothecary. He'll surely be able to provide some help with whatever requests you have. Mu Xueqing added hurriedly. All right. Hesitating slightly, Zhang Xian nodded. The person he was currently impersonating, Lu Cheng, wasn't an apothecary, so it might be inconvenient for him to get what he wanted there. However, with the assistance of an apothecary, he could be spared a lot of trouble. Exiting the mini-tutoring classroom, Zhang Xian proceeded to guide Meng Tao and the others on their cultivation before checking on Lu Chong's progress. This Lu Chong was truly tenacious in his training. He had already undergone the poison tempering 3 times. Although the pain he suffered was excruciating, he had managed to hang on, and thus managed to reap rewards that were proportionate to his suffering. With his current state of cultivation, Lu Chong was in no way inferior to a Tongxian realm primary stage expert. It seemed like defeating a Tongxian real pinnacle expert wouldn't be a problem as long as he persevered a few more times. After settling all of these matters, Zhang Xian, along with Mu Xueqing, headed straight for the Apothecary Guild. The Apothecary Guild wasn't too far away from the academy, and the duo soon arrived at its entrance in an hour's time. Tianwu Kingdom's Apothecary Guild was much more imposing and grand than Tianxian Kingdom's. Mu Xueqing seemed to have been here often as she maneuvered expertly around the guild to find her father, Apothecary Mu. Thank you, Guild Leader Lu, for resolving my daughter's pill poison issue. After receiving news that Lu Laoshi was here, how could Apothecary Mu remain idle? He immediately rushed forward to welcome him. He might be a 2-star apothecary, but the person he was facing was the guild leader of the Physician Guild. On top of that, he solved his daughter's problem and imparted her an incredible battle technique. Grateful to the other party, he greeted Zhang Xian warmly and respectfully. My daughter told me that Lu Laoshi intends to trigger the medicinal energy accumulated within her body. If there is anything I can be of assistance, feel free to speak. After trading some pleasantries, Apothecary Mu dived into the topic at hand. Previously, when his daughter informed him of Lu Laoshi's intentions, he was astounded. As a 2-star apothecary, he knew how challenging this matter was. If it was anyone else, he would have surely thought that the other party was bragging. However, the person before him was someone capable of even curing pill poison. Perhaps, he could really accomplish this matter that even the guild leader was incapable of. I need a medicinal solution that can reinforce and nourish her internals. The higher the tier of the medicinal solution, the better it is. After which, Zhang Xian hesitated for a brief moment before asking, also, I hope to access the library of your guild. I hope that you can make an exception for me. With the reinforcement and nourishment of the medicinal solution, the potential harm to her body caused by the overwhelming energy would be minimized. This way, the danger of the matter could be reduced. As for his request to access the library, firstly, he hoped to enhance his knowledge of pill forging. Secondly, he wanted to find a method to help Zhao Ye achieve a breakthrough. Since both parties had agreed on a duel, Zhang Xian couldn't possibly just help a single side. Zhao Ye might not have a huge accumulation of medicinal energy in her body, but she was blessed with the purine body. Back then, the Unwilling pill that she consumed only awakened her unique constitution by 10%. If her unique constitution could be awakened by 20%, her cultivation would surely soar once more. However, the prerequisite to the matter was that Zhang Xian had to find a way to further awaken the purine body. Since he was able to obtain information on the Unwilling pill back in Tianxian Kingdom, he might be able to find something similar in this guild too. Leave the medicinal solution to me. As for the library, typically speaking, only official apothecaries are allowed to enter. However, Lu Laoshi is a formidable physician, and there are many points of similarity between physicians and apothecaries. On top of that, you are helping my daughter to trigger her medicinal energy. I will check back with the guild leader on this matter, and perhaps he might be willing to make an exception. After hesitating for a moment, Apothecary Mu said. Under normal circumstances, a guild's library was only accessible to the members of the occupation. Outsiders had no rights to browse through them. However, the person before him was the guild leader of the Physician Guild, as well as the teacher of his daughter. Even if it meant flouting the rules, he had to try his best to help him. Zhang Xian nodded. Apothecary Mu backed out of the room, and before long, he returned with good news. The guild leader has agreed to it. Thank you. After instructing Mu Xueqing on how she should condition her body, Zhang Xian nodded, and under Apothecary Mu's lead, he headed straight for the library. A classroom in Tianwu Academy. Sun Cheng Laoshi, the principal is looking for you. Pushing open the classroom doors, a teacher walked in. The principal is looking for me. Sun Laoshe asked doubtfully. That's right. It seems to be something related to Lu Qing Laoshe. The other teacher replied. Has something happened to him? Sun Laoshe was taken aback. It can't be that you haven't heard of it yet. Noting the confusion in the other party's expression, the other teacher was speechless. How could you remain nonchalant and conduct your lesson calmly with such a huge ruckus outside? A fight broke out between Lu Laoshe's student and master teacher Zhang Xian's student. Since you entered the academy with Lu Laoshe and is familiar with him, the principal wishes for you to talk to him on the academy's behalf. The other teacher replied. Lu Laoshe and master teacher Zhang Xian. Sun Laoshe was dumbfounded. If Zhang Xian was here, he would have definitely recognized this Sun Qing Laoshe. It was the unparalleled genius who was currently taking the 2-star master teacher examination along with him. Mo Hongyi. Chapter 360, Wall of Pill Formulae. What's going on? Mo Hongyi was on the verge of going insane. Lu Laoshe and master teacher Zhang Xian, weren't they freaking the same person? Their students clashed with one another. What was going on? You sure are serious in your teaching. Sensing the other party's bewilderment, the other teacher immediately filled him in on the details. A student of master teacher Zhang Xian, if I recall correctly, her name is Zhao Ye, had fought with Lu Laoshe's student, Mu Xueqing, because of some unknown reason. It seems that they had clashed once before and today's fight was the second time they faced one another. He quickly recounted the entire matter. Upon understanding the entire matter, a bizarre expression appeared on Mo Hongyi's face. It seemed as though he was trying his best to hold back his laughter. For the students under his disguised persona to fight with his original students, not to mention, so vehemently, as though they wouldn't let this matter go unless they do. The other party in Zhang Xian was probably suffering from a breakdown at this moment. What does the principal want from me? Mo Hongyi asked. The principal wishes to have Zhang Shi and Lu Laoshe meet one another and settle their grudges. Since you're familiar with Lu Laoshe, he hopes that you can persuade him on this matter. The other teacher said. I have to persuade Lu Laoshe and Zhang Shi to sit down together and talk it out. Mo Hongyi's expression became even more bizarre. You must be joking. The two of them are the same person. How could Zhang Xian possibly sit down and talk to himself? Alright, I'll look for Lu Laoshe and talk to him about this matter. Tell the principal to leave this matter to me. Suppressing his laughter, Mo Hongyi replied. Aren't you a genius capable of everything? Let's see how you'll deal with this. After conversing for a moment longer, Mo Hongyi started walking towards Zhang Xian's classroom. Yuan Tao, where are you going? Why didn't you invite me along? As soon as Yuan Tao walked out of his room, a hushed voice sounded. He quickly turned around and saw Zheng Yang grinning a short distance away. Yuan Tao hesitated. Alright, I know that you're going to cause trouble for that Lu Laoshe. Let's go together. Zheng Yang rolled his eyes. I'm afraid that teacher will blame us after learning about this, Yuan Tao said. If Zhang Shi were to find out about this, he would probably be in for a beating. Since Yuan Tao was resilient to thrashings, he wasn't afraid of it. However, he was unwilling to pull Zheng Yang down along with him. Don't worry, we're brothers after all. How can I allow you to suffer the blame alone? Knowing his thoughts, Zheng Yang chuckled. However, I'm afraid that just the two of us aren't sufficient. What do you mean? Simple. If you wish to poison that Lu Laoshe, you will have to sneak into his classroom, right? On top of that, you have to find the container which he stores his water in before you can spike it. You may possess incredible defense, but you're lacking in agility. It's the same for me as well. So, it's impossible for us to do it, at which, Zheng Yang smiled, unless, Wang Ying. Yuan Tao immediately understood Zheng Yang's words. Indeed. Why don't we invite her along? Given her movement techniques, she'll surely be able to spike Lu Laoshe's drink without anyone noticing. Zheng Yang suggested. Alright, after giving it some thoughts, Yuan Tao nodded in agreement. It wasn't too difficult for them to convince Wang Ying. That lady was a weak-willed person, so it was normally impossible to convince her to commit such deeds. However, if one was able to grasp her weakness, she was still an easy target. And this weakness was Zhang Laoshi. In the fight for Zhang Laoshi's honor, this Lu Laoshi had shamelessly sided with his own student. Even though Wang Ying didn't say anything then, she was actually extremely angry. The person outside said. Yes, Zheng Yang hurriedly nodded. After which, the visitor turned around and left. However, a distance away, he suddenly stopped. Why did those youngsters in the room look so familiar, as though he had met them somewhere before? Forget it, unable to recall anyone who fit those profiles, he didn't think much of it. Thus, he resumed his steps. We should leave now. Seeing that they had managed to get away unscathed, Zheng Yang and the others immediately took the opportunity to leave the classroom and dashed back to the residence. Who? Heaving a sigh of relief, Zhang Xian stretched his back. It took him an entire afternoon before he managed to duplicate all of the books in the Apothecary Guild into his head. Having expended much of his mental strength, he was exhausted. Pure body. With a thought, dozens of books immediately appeared before him. He casually flipped them open. Quickly browsing through them, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Indeed, there were records on the pure body in them. Grade 4 Frigid Pill is extremely effective in the awakening of pure body. Frigid Pill? Reading through all of the books on the pure body, only 2 of them contained content regarding the awakening of the constitution. Both of them mentioned the Frigid Pill. Frigid Pill, a grade 4 pill, forged with medicinal herbs of extremely cold attribute. It is an extremely valuable pill. The content of the book was verified by the Library of Heaven's Path, so Zhang Xian was certain that the pill was useful for the awakening of the pure body. However, it wasn't long before another dilemma struck him. There were number 4-star apothecaries in Tianwu Kingdom, and naturally, there were no grade 4 pills either. Thus, the only way to obtain the pill was to purchase it from the headquarters. Moreover, it was highly probable that it would take several days for the pill to be delivered here, just like when Zhang Xian ordered the Unwilling pill from Tianxian Kingdom. However, Zhao Ye and Mu Xueqing's duel was in 3 days' time. It was impossible for the pill to arrive in time. More importantly, a grade 3 pill was already sufficient to send him into bankruptcy. A grade 4 pill was bound to be worse. It was probably impossible for Zhang Xian to afford it. If I have the pill formula, I may be able to guide someone to forge it. A thought appeared in Zhang Xian's mind. He might be incapable of forging pills, but he could guide someone to do so. However, the prerequisite for that was that he had to have the pill formula. Otherwise, given the countless medicinal herbs in the world, he would be dead before he could find the formula for it on his own, the pill formula for the Frigid pill. With a flick of his mental consciousness, he swiftly looked through the contents in the Library of Heaven's Path, but soon, his face fell. Despite the innumerable books in the Tianwu Kingdom's Apothecary Guild, there weren't any books that recorded the formula for this pill. Nonetheless, it wasn't long before Zhang Xian came to a realization. The Frigid pill was a grade 4 pill, while the most capable apothecary in this guild was a 3-star. Thus, how could such an advanced formula be in the library? Without the formula, I'll be unable to forget the pill. What should I do? Zhang Xian rubbed his glabella. After all, he couldn't just help Mu Xueqing and neglect Zhao Ye. In this case, it wouldn't be a duel, but a one-sided battle. Forget it, I'll ask about it later. By the time Zhang Xian walked out of the library, the sky had already darkened. Lu Laoshi. Apothecary Mu rushed forward to greet Zhang Xian. The other party was working diligently for the sake of his own daughter, skipping his meals and studying for long hours. This had made him extremely grateful to the other party. Apothecary Mu, is there anyone in our guild who possess grade 4 pill formulae? Zhang Xian asked. Even though there was no grade 4-pill formula in the books in the library. Some of the apothecaries might have it in their private stash. Grade 4-pill formulae. Apothecary Mu shook his head. Our guild doesn't have any pill formula of this level. However, if you wish, it's possible to apply for it from the headquarter. Apply from the headquarter? Zhang Xian smiled bitterly. Then, wouldn't it take at least half a month before the pill formula arrives? He knew that the headquarter would surely have the pill formula, but the travel time, to and fro, from the closest conferred kingdom, Xianyuan Kingdom, to Tianwu Kingdom, was at least half a month. Even if you were to apply for it right now, it would be impossible for the pill formula to arrive on time. Half a month? There's no need for that. If it's a pill, a tangible object, it'll have to take at least half a month. However, the pill formula will appear on the wall of pill formulae straight. Apothecary Mu smiled. Wall of pill formulae. Zhang Xian was taken aback. Indeed. Similar to the wall of dilemma of the physician guild, the wall of pill formulae is connected to the headquarter. Through the wall of pill formulae, apothecaries who have reached a certain rank can pay a price to request for a pill formula which grade isn't too far beyond their rank or knowledge. Apothecary Mu explained. Oh. Upon hearing the name, Zhang Xian immediately looked up related information among the books in the Library of Heaven's Path. Just like what the other parties said, the wall of pill formulae was similar to the wall of dilemma in the physician guild. It was connected to the headquarter, and as long as one was able to pay the price, one could request for a pill formula or information from the headquarter. However, to make use of the wall of pill formulae, one must at least reach the level of a 3-star apothecary. Chapter 361. Then you should just take the examination. Under Apothecary Mu's lead, it didn't take long for them to arrive at a room. Please report that Apothecary Mu Yang requests for an audience. Apothecary Mu clasped his fist toward the apprentice guarding by the door. Yes. Knowing the other party's identity, the apprentice immediately went in to report his presence. A moment later, however, he returned with an apologetic look on his face. Teacher is currently discussing some important matters with an esteemed guest, so he isn't free at the moment. Apothecary Mu, you should return tomorrow. This matter is urgent. I really can't wait until tomorrow. Apothecary Mu shook his head. I hope that you can relay another message for me. Just say that I have something urgent that I require Apothecary Hong's help on. Since Lu Laoshi had made this request, the grade 4 pill formula must be extremely important to him. Otherwise, he could have chosen to purchase a pill instead. No matter the cost, Apothecary Mu was determined to help Zhang Xian on this matter. This I'll try asking again. The apprentice nodded and walked in. Aren't you all apothecaries? Why? Seeing the sight before him, Zhang Xian was perplexed. Hongyi and Mu Yangfeng were both apothecaries. One of them was a 3-star primary while the other one was a 2-star pinnacle. There wasn't a huge difference between them, so why was it so troublesome to meet the other party? The guild leader is already old, so he doesn't interfere in the affairs of the guild. At the moment, most affairs of the guild are handled by Apothecary Hong, and all of the apothecaries answer to him. Thus, his standing is much higher than mine. Because of this, it took me a great deal of effort before I managed to get you the permission to enter the library. Apothecary Mu explained. After hearing the other party's explanation, Zhang Xian finally understood the situation. Apothecary Hongyi had always been an arrogant person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have reprimanded the other apothecaries despite not having met Zhang Xian and verifying the results of the test back in Tianxian Kingdom. Having surpassed the boundary which had trapped many other apothecaries had inflated his ego, and now, it was difficult for any apothecary to even meet him, much less ask him for requests. Lu Laoshi, when we enter the room later on, I'll have to trouble you not to say anything. Outsiders aren't allowed to access pill formulae easily, and I'm afraid that if you say that you're the one who wanted it, not only will you be rejected, it might even cause a whole string of trouble. Apothecary Mu instructed. Zhang Xian nodded. Pill formulae were the treasures of the apothecaries, and they would never show it to outsiders easily. It was indeed a little inappropriate for a physician like him to ask for a pill formula from them. After waiting for around 2 incenses time at the door, just when they were about to reach the limit of their patience, the apprentice walked out. "Apothecary Mu, please enter. However, our teacher only has a tea's time. After that, he still has other matters to attend to. Thus, if there are any important matter to speak of, please do it fast, all right?" Apothecary Mu nodded. The duo entered the room and saw Apothecary Hongyi sitting on the center seat. Beside him was a young man who was leisurely sipping his tea. It was none other than the one-star master teacher who, due to his fancy for Mou, kept trying to prove his superiority before Zhang Xian back in the master teacher pavilion, the son of pavilion master Jiang Chen. "Apothecary Mu, what urgent matter do you have to ask of me?" Lifting up his teacup, he prodded at the tea leaves floating at the surface before turning to look at Apothecary Mu with a leisurely attitude. "I have something that I need to trouble Apothecary Hong on." Apothecary Mu replied respectfully. "I wish to ask for Apothecary Hong to request for a grade 4 pill formula for me. I will bear the fees for the transaction." "Grade 4 pill formula?" Apothecary Hongyi frowned. "You're just a 2-star apothecary. Why would you need that for?" Clasping his fist, Apothecary Mu replied, "I have others uses for it. However, Apothecary Hong, rest assured, I won't do anything that flouts the rules of the guild." Apothecaries were allowed to request for pill formulae, but they were forbidden from selling it or using it to conduct scams or any other immoral actions. "Other uses for it?" Apothecary Hongyi stood up, and with his hands behind his back, he walked up to Apothecary Mu and glared at him imposingly. As an apothecary, attempting something beyond one's capability will not only not bring one glory, it'll even embarrass one. Your pill forging skill isn't bad, but grade 2 pinnacle pills are already your limit. Come back to request for a grade 4 pill formula after you can successfully forge a grade 3 pill. In his view, the reason why this fellow was asking for a grade 4 pill was because he wanted to try forging it to impress everyone. However, despite being unable to forge even a grade 3 pill, he was actually attempting to forge a grade 4 pill. That was nothing more than a waste of precious medicinal herbs. Not expecting the other party to react so vehemently, Apothecary Mu's face flushed. "All right, you should leave now." With a dark complexion, Apothecary Hong tilted his head upward with a proud expression. "I beseech you to help me request for it. The process isn't too bothersome, so it shouldn't pose much of a problem." "It's just a small favor," Apothecary Mu tried once more. Regardless, they were both apothecaries of the same guild, and their ranks weren't too far apart from one another either. A grade 4 pill formula might be valuable, but Apothecary Mu had already promised to bear the price of it. Ignorant. If grade 3 pills could be forged that easily, there wouldn't be just 2 3-star apothecaries in the entire guild. Upon hearing the apprentice behind Mu Yangfeng spouting such ignorant words, Apothecary Hongyi and Jiang Chen flung their sleeves in disdain. "What the heck was that? Why don't you just take the 3-star apothecary examination? Do you think that it is that easy to become a 3-star apothecary? Do you think that you can pass the examination just because you wanted to?" There were a total of 5 2-star pinnacle apothecaries in Tianwu Kingdom Apothecary Guild, but despite many years had passed, the only one who managed to achieve a breakthrough was him. This clearly reflected the difficulty of the task. If Apothecary Mu was capable of forging a grade 3 pill, he would have taken the examination long ago. There was no need for him to wait until now. That fellow was truly incomparably ignorant. "It is just a grade 3 pill, it is actually quite easy. As long as you follow my instructions closely during the forging, you'll surely succeed." Ignoring the disdainful duo by the side, Zhang Xian spoke nonchalantly. He was counting on Apothecary Hongyi to send in the request, but since the latter wasn't willing, he didn't want to stoop down to begging him either. Since all 3-star apothecaries could request for pill formulas, then why couldn't he make one himself? It isn't a big deal anyway. Easy. How arrogant. Upon hearing the apprentice bragging, Apothecary Hongyi's complexion turned dark and he nearly erupted. Where did this fellow pop up from? Easy, do you know what a grade 3 pill is? How dare you spout such arrogant words here? This Apothecary Mu hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth. Alright. He didn't know why Lu Laoshi would say such words, but as the guild leader of the physician guild, he didn't think that the other party was a braggart. Since he had said such words, he must have a way to do so. Let's not waste time and just forge here then. Seeing the other party agree to it, Zhang Xian waved his hands casually. Back then, Zhang Xian had guided Mou to forge a grade 2 pill at the Beast Hall. Honestly speaking, guiding a 2-star pinnacle apothecary to forge a grade 3 pill wasn't too much of a problem for him. If he knew that it was that easy to become a 3-star apothecary, he wouldn't have gone through the trouble to look for Apothecary Hongyi. Alright. Knowing that it was impossible to back down now, Mu Yangfeng did not hesitate anymore. With a flick of his wrist, a giant cauldron appeared in the room. Fine, I would like to see what kind of pill you can forge. Not expecting the apprentice to be so arrogant as to have Mu Yangfeng forge a grade 3 pill on the spot, Apothecary Hongyi felt so angered that he started laughing instead. He had seen braggarts, but he hadn't seen one who was capable of bragging to such an extent. Guide him to forge pills a grade 3 at that. Who do you think you are? Pavilion Master Jiang of the Master Teacher Pavilion? The pill forging genius Zhang Shi. What a joke. You're just a mere apprentice. Despite your insignificant position, you sure have a big mouth. By the side, Jiang Chen frowned as well. As a master teacher, he knew how difficult pill forging was. Guiding a 2-star pinnacle apothecary to forge a grade 3 pill was as difficult as ascending the heavens. Surely I must be dreaming. Are you sure there isn't something wrong with your head? Chapter 362, Who are you? Lu Laoshi, what pill are we going to forge? Knowing that there was no backing out now, Mu Yangfeng put down his cauldron, lit the fire, and turned to look at Zhang Xian. There were countless grade 3 pills, and they had to decide on one to forge. Since the other party dared to spout such words, he must be extremely familiar with a certain type of pill. Otherwise, he wouldn't have possibly bragged that a pill would be formed as long as he followed his instructions strictly. What pill? Zhang Xian was taken aback. He had never considered this problem. Thus, after hesitating for a moment, he looked at Apothecary Mu and asked, Right, what kind of pill must you forge before you can be qualified as a 3-star apothecary? Since the 3-star apothecary examination required one to forge a grade 3 pill, there might be some guidelines on the pill. If so, it would be better to follow by the rules. Any grade 3 pill will work, but most 3-star apothecaries choose to forge the grade 3 White Sun pill. This is also the pill that Apothecary Hong forged for the examination back then. Upon hearing the other party asking such fundamental questions, Apothecary Mu rolled his eyes. At the same time, an ominous feeling sprouted in his heart. Alright, let's forge this White Sun pill then. Oh, can you lend me your pill formula so that I can take a look? Zhang Xian scratched his head apologetically. I've never seen this pill before, so I'm not too clear what kind of medicinal herbs are required for it. I have to look through it before I can guide you. Mu Yangfeng staggered, and he nearly burst into tears. Brother, I trusted you so much that I have already taken out the cauldron and lit the fire, yet you're telling me that you've never seen the pill formula before. Why are you treating me like this? Apothecary Hongyi and Jiang Chen were also speechless as well. They thought that the other party might truly be some incredible fellow that would amaze all of them, but it turned out that he was just an oaf. To say that he would guide someone on his pill forging despite having never seen the pill formula before. Will you die if you don't brag? The other party had truly impressed them with this. This is the pill formula. Apothecary Mu passed the pill formula over resentfully. As the conventional pill used by most apothecaries for the 3-star examination, the pill formula for the White Sun pill was no secret. Almost all 2-star apothecaries were aware of it, and it wasn't a big deal to show it to him. All right. Nodding his head, Zhang Xian touched it, and its contents immediately appeared in the Library of Heaven's Path. At the same time, many books regarding the forging of White Sun pill appeared in his mind. He had collected almost all of the books in the library of the Apothecary Guild. Even though there were no pill formulae there, pill formulae were invaluable treasures after all. Detailed on those books were the reflections of the elders in forging specific pills. Compile. Muttering softly, an entirely new book appeared before him. Alright, let's begin the forging. Browsing through the book, Zhang Xian turned to look at Apothecary Mu with a grave expression. Follow my instructions strictly. You mustn't make the slightest error. Alright. Even though he felt dismal, Mu Yangfeng had already put the word out. Left with no choice, he could only nod helplessly. As a 2-star pinnacle apothecary, he would often spend his time attempting to forge the White Sun pill. As such, he had quite a few sets of spare medicinal herbs in his storage ring, thus sparing them the trouble of obtaining them. Soon, the ignition of the flame, the warming of the cauldron, and the preparation of the medicinal herbs were done. Just by looking at the other party's smooth movements in the preparation, Zhang Xian was already impressed. As expected of a 2-star pinnacle apothecary. His movements were much more skilled than any other apothecaries he had seen before, be it Mou or guild leader Ouyang. Zhang Xian walked up to the cauldron and touched it before retreating back. The temperature is around there. Should I add the medicinal herbs in now? The flame licked at the sides of the cauldron, and soon, the cauldron was already fiery hot, and the air in the surroundings distorted under the immense heat. Wait a moment. Zhang Xian waved casually. Continue warming the cauldron. All right. Since Apothecary Mu had already decided to follow the other party's instructions, he didn't hesitate at all. Under the drive of his Jinqi, the flames under the cauldron continued to blaze furiously. The cauldron is already red. Apothecary Hongyi and Jiang Chen glanced at one another in bewilderment. Did this fellow really know anything about pill forging? Forging a pill was very different from forging an equipment, where the higher the temperature, the better it was. Harnessing the wood attribute, medicinal herbs tended to lose their medicinal properties easily when exposed to excessive heat, thus rendering them useless. The cauldron was already burning a shade of bright red, and it looked as though it would burst apart soon. Putting aside forging pills, the medicinal herbs would probably burn to crisp if they were thrown in under such a state. What in the world was he up to? Place the whitewood grass in. Just as they were completely baffled over this matter, the young man's voice finally sounded. He's throwing in the main ingredient of the White Sun pill directly. Apothecary Hongyi's body swayed. Whitewood grass was the main ingredient of the White Sun pill. It was highly flammable, and upon contact with flames, it would be immediately set ablaze. Conventions dictated that it should be placed in the middle of the forging to prevent it from being burned into cinders by the blazing cauldron, as well as to allow it to better fuse with the other medicinal herbs. The cauldron was already on the verge of bursting from the intense heat, and black smoke was puffing out of it to throw the whitewood grass in under such conditions. The heck. Without a doubt, the medicinal herbs would be burned to ashes as soon as it entered the cauldron. Preposterous. He is truly fooling around. This fellow knows nothing about pill forging. I truly wonder where Apothecary Mu found him. Harumphing coldly, Apothecary Hongyi's face steeled. There was no doubt about it, this pill forging would surely end in failure. Anyone who had the slightest knowledge of pill forging would know not to raise the temperature of the cauldron excessively. That ignorant fellow bragged that he would instruct Apothecary Mu to successfully forge a grade 3 pill, and yet, he made such an elementary mistake. Where did this cretin come from? Apothecary Mu must truly be blind to trust a person like him. An elder council should be assembled after this farce to teach these two a lesson. Otherwise, not only would precious medicinal herbs be wasted, the reputation of the guild would also go down the drain. Ignoring Apothecary Hongyi, whose face was darkening by the moment, Zhang Xian continued instructing Mu Yangfeng. 12 breaths later, put in the two-eyed beard, he issued a series of instructions. This sequence was completely different from the conventional forging methods detailed in the books for the White Sun pill, and it even seemed to contradict with the fundamental concepts of pill forging. Even so, since he had already given his word, Apothecary Mu followed the other party's instructions strictly even though he was doubtful of the result. Gritting his teeth, he continued throwing different medicinal herbs into the cauldron while controlling the temperature of the flame carefully, not daring to make the slightest mistake. Something is wrong. As more and more medicinal herbs were thrown into the cauldron, doubts started sprouting in Apothecary Mu's mind. He had forged the White Sun pill many times in the past, and usually, after placing a few medicinal herbs in, the cauldron would begin to rock violently, as if it would explode at any moment. But this time, despite having thrown in so many medicinal herbs in, there wasn't any sign of movement at all. Could it be that all of the medicinal properties had been balanced out? If that was the case, the other party's instructions must be correct, and this meant that there was a high probability that the pill forging would be successful. Wait, that doesn't seem like it, then, he shook his head. While it was possible for the reason behind the cauldron being calm to be due to the medicinal properties being balanced out perfectly, there was also another possibility: all of the medicinal herbs inside had already been reduced to cinders by the searing heat. If the medicinal properties of the herbs had already been eroded, then naturally, they couldn't possibly react explosively with one another. Thinking about it, the latter seemed much more probable. After all, even 4-star apothecaries were incapable of balancing out medicinal properties perfectly. Forget it, I'll just finish the pill forging first. Even though Apothecary Mu didn't think that the pill forging would succeed, he still followed Lu Laoshir's instructions strictly and threw in medicinal herbs one after another. Soon, he threw in the very last medicinal herb. Open the cauldron. Zhang Xian instructed. Open the cauldron. Mu Yangfeng was taken aback. Normally, after throwing all of the medicinal herbs in, the mixture had to be left to simmer for a moment so that the herbs could be fused together perfectly for the formation of the pills. To open the cauldron right after throwing all of the medicinal herbs in, wasn't this being too hasty? Quick! Zhang Xian didn't expect the other party to hesitate. Anxious, he urged him once more. Based on the book in the Library of Heaven's Path, the cauldron had to be opened right after all of the medicinal herbs were thrown in for the pill forging to be perfect. The other party's slight moment of hesitation had caused many mistakes to appear in the book already. At this point, even if a pill were to be formed, its effectiveness would be lowered by several grades. On the other hand, upon seeing this sight, Apothecary Hongyi harumphed coldly and shook his head. Do you think that the pills will be formed? Jiang Chen couldn't help but ask. The pill that Apothecary Hongyi had forged for his 3-star apothecary examination was also the White Sun pill, and his feat of achieving formation for it had caused a huge uproar in the city back then. Do I think that the pills will be formed? Apothecary Hongyi harumphed disdainfully. While they are lucky that the cauldron didn't explode, all of the medicinal herbs inside it are surely ashes by now given the overwhelming heat in the cauldron just now. To expect a pill to be formed under such circumstances, that's no different from dreaming. Burn to cinders? Jiang Chen asked doubtfully. If you don't believe me, watch on. If pills can be formed after all that have happened, I'll cut off my head, Apothecary Hongyi gestured confidently. If a pill could be formed with that nonsensical pill forging sequence, wouldn't 3-star apothecaries like himself would be truly worthless? He wasn't the only one to think so. Even Mu Yangfeng himself didn't think well of this pill forging. After a moment of hesitation, he clenched his jaws and opened the cauldron. Who? Filled with despair, he prepared himself to see an entire floor of black sludge from the herbs when a gush of pill fragrance wafted from the cauldron. This. Mu Yangfeng was taken aback. Rushing forward, he stretched his hand into the cauldron and grabbed onto something. Taking a closer look, it was a round and glistening pill. The fragrance it emanated assaulted his nose. This is a white sun pill reaching the level of PP perfection. Mu Yangfeng widened his eyes, flabbergasted. Pills formed had different tiers. Formation, satiation, perfection, an inscribed pill based on his judgment. Given the forging method previously, the pill forging should have ended in utter failure, and the only thing that should appear from the cauldron was black sludge. Never in his dreams did he expect that a pill would be formed and at the level of perfection at that. How is this possible? What? Perfection. On the other hand, Apothecary Hongyi looked as though he was on the verge of fainting. His body shuddered violently, and he nearly bit his own tongue off. He had just said that if the other party managed to form a pill, he would cut his head off in the end. Not only did the other party manage to form a pill, it even reached the level of perfection. The heck? How did this happen? That young man had started guiding Apothecary Mu on the process right after browsing through the pill formula of the White Sun pill for the first time. The other party even went against conventions and warmed the cauldron until it's blazing hot before throwing the medicinal herbs in. Yet, not only were the medicinal herbs not burned to cinders, it even reached the level of perfection. This sight overturned everything he knew of pill forging. The laws that he thought were absolute in pill forging for several decades suddenly felt like a huge lie, and just the thought of it left him completely frenzied. This what's going on? Shuddering, Apothecary Mu turned to look at Zhang Xian, curious to know what had just happened. How did he succeed in the pill forging, just like that? When did a grade 3 pill become so easy to forge? Seeing the other party's doubtful gaze, Zhang Xian smiled casually. Even though the whitewood grass is highly flammable, that doesn't mean that it can't come into contact with flames. On the contrary, strong heat brings out its medicinal properties better. Therefore, the first herb that one should place in is this. This way, the medicinal properties of the other herbs can be fused perfectly with it layer after layer, thus bringing out the full effectiveness of the medicinal herbs. On top of that, the opening and closing of the cauldron during the intervals where one places the medicinal herbs in will cause the medicinal energy to escape. Thus, if you put the whitewood grass from the very start, it'll absorb all of the medicinal properties, fuse them together, and coagulate into a pill. Continuing on, Two-Eyed Beard grows in the marshlands. Even though it contains yang attribute energy, there are also traces of water attribute energy within it. Only under extreme heat can the water attribute energy be forced out. With his hands behind his back, Zhang Xian started strolling about the room as he explained the various sequences one after another. Initially, they were skeptical at the other party's words. However, after hearing his explanations one after another, Apothecary Hongyi and the others couldn't help but tremble vigorously. Eventually, their face stiffened completely. Instead of touching on the pill forging techniques, his explanations came from the perspective of maximizing the effectiveness of the medicinal properties of each herb. How one should heat the medicinal herbs and mediate between the various herbs to fully bring out the properties of the medicinal herbs. It sounded like nothing much, but to analyze a complex grade 3 pill formula so thoroughly was an extremely fearsome feat. Firstly, one had to possess an utmost understanding of every single medicinal herb contained in the pill formula. On top of that, one still had to deduce the individual reactions based on their properties precisely to select the most correct method to fuse them together. Not to mention, these deductions were highly prone to errors. As experienced apothecaries, they clearly understood the difficulty in doing so, and as such, the other party's feat had truly left all of them astounded. With just his grasp over medicinal properties, he was able to ensure that the medicinal herbs could fuse together perfectly such that no problems would crop up. Why, you aren't an apprentice, who are you? Apothecary Hongyi stared at Zhang Xian in fright. Just by his knowledge of the respective medicinal properties of the herbs, the young man before him was able to ensure that a grade 3 pill was being crafted flawlessly. Even the guild leader was incapable of such a feat. Who in the world was this fellow? How could he possess such immense understanding of medicinal herbs? He's the new guild leader of the Physician Guild who solved 19 questions on the Wall of Dilemma, Apothecary Mu replied. Lu Cheng. Chapter 363, Price, Lu Cheng Guild Leader Lu. Apothecary Hong and Jiang Cheng trembled vigorously upon hearing that name. Even though this guild leader Lu had become a celebrity in the capital recently, his name was even placed alongside the supreme genius, Zhang Xian. The duo had never seen his true appearance before. The duo had thought that he was an apprentice given that he was following behind Apothecary Mu, and his young age did little to change that perception. Never in their dreams could they have imagined that the young man would actually have such an astounding background. As the guild leader of the Physician Guild, his standing was in no way inferior to their guild leader. Even Apothecary Hong, as a 3-star apothecary, was beneath him in terms of standing. Just that wasn't the other party supposed to be proficient in the way of medicine? Why was he able to guide a 2-star apothecary to forge a grade 3 pill? Be it the way of medicine or pill forging, one must possess absolute grasp over the medicinal properties of the respective herbs to decide on the most ideal formula to create the most effective medicine. I might not be an apothecary, and I'm incapable of forging pills as well, but my grasp over medicinal herbs allows me to deduce the changes occurring within a cauldron precisely. With this, I'm confident in guiding an apothecary to forge even a grade 4 pill, needless to say, a grade 3 pill. Knowing the various thoughts running through other parties' mind, Zhang Xian replied calmly. One could achieve this much just by knowing the properties of medicinal herbs. Apothecary Hongyun felt as though he was losing his sanity. Even the temperature at which a medicinal herb was simmered could affect the medicinal properties it released. The slightest mistake could easily result in the greatest difference, determining a failure from a success. Despite his lack of understanding in pill forging, he was able to guide someone in forging a grade 3 pill solely based on his grasp of the properties of medicinal herbs. Could such an existence still be considered a human? All along, the elites of Tianwu Royal City didn't think that highly of the famous guild leader Lu, believing that he might have prepared the answers to the 19 questions on the Wall of Dilemma beforehand, thus allowing him to solve them in a single go. But now, they realized that there wasn't any need for the other party to do so. His capability was the real deal. Putting everything aside, just his understanding of the properties of medicinal herbs would surely be unmatched by anyone in Tianwu Royal City. Even their guild leader couldn't match up to him. The study of medicinal herbs is profound and deep. How can it be summarized with just a few words? In truth, be it the prescription of a physician or the pill formula of an apothecary, they are both centered around the concept of complementing medicinal herbs in the most perfect manner to draw out their medicinal properties effectively. The two paths would naturally converge together upon reaching a certain level of understanding toward medicinal herb. As Zhang Xian spoke casually, his sleeves swayed under the slight breeze. At this moment, his figure looked as though an unparalleled expert of the world. Even though his words were logical, making it impossible for anyone to refute it, but in truth, such things only existed in theory. In other words, it was impossible for an ordinary human to be capable of such calculations. Even if one's understanding of medicinal herbs reached the level of a 7-star physician, it would still be impossible for one to guide another to successfully forge a pill just based on that. To make an analogy, it was just like how even though scientists knew that one could travel back into time just by exceeding the speed of light, it was impossible in practice, and to date, no one had been able to succeed. In the end, theories were just theories, they were a long way off from accurately depicting reality. The quality of the cauldron, the heat from the cauldron, the cultivation of the apothecary, the atmosphere, the maturity of the medicinal herbs, all of these were factors that would affect the ultimate product. A difference in one or two of these factors may not amount to anything much, but when all of these differences were stacked over one another, it would result in a huge divergence. Zhang Xian had only managed to do so with the help of the Library of Heaven's Path. I've been enlightened, knowing how difficult the feat was. Apothecary Hong was impressed. Zhang Xian nodded in satisfaction. So, is Apothecary Mu considered a 3-star apothecary now? Does he have the qualification to request for a pill formula from the wall of pill formulae? The reason why Apothecary Mu is able to forge a grade 3 pill is due to your guidance, but with this experience, it shouldn't be difficult for him to succeed in the future. As such, he is qualified to request for a pill formula at the wall of pill formulae. After hesitating for a moment, Apothecary Hong replied. While Apothecary Mu had only succeeded this time due to the other party's guidance, it shouldn't be too difficult for him to replicate this success individually as long as he worked on it diligently. In other words, it was just a matter of time before Apothecary Mu became a true 3-star apothecary. Thus, in non-strict terms, it shouldn't be considered as a violation of the rules for him to request for a pill formula anymore. If I knew it was this easy, I wouldn't have wasted so much of my time asking for your help. Hearing the affirmation, Zhang Xian shook his head and remarked. He ended up waiting so long outside, only to be refused in the end. If he knew that it was just the matter of forging a single pill, he would have just done so from the start. What a huge waste of time. Zhang Xian was just complaining casually, but when Apothecary Mu heard those words, the edge of his mouth twitched. Guild leader Lu was disregarding Apothecary Hong's pride before them, and this was no different from a public humiliation. He secretly sneaked a peek toward Apothecary Hong and saw the other party's entire body trembling violently. It seemed as though he was just a single push away from spewing blood. At this moment, Apothecary Hong was truly on the verge of a breakdown. Guild leader Lu, you are doing it intentionally, aren't you? You intentionally hid your identity from us just so that we could make a fool out of ourselves. The heck. If I knew that you had such capability, I wouldn't have dared to boast before you. Now, not only did I fail to pull my weight, I even became a fool instead. More importantly, I have insulted a genius because of this. How could I ask anything of you in the future like this? Let's go. Ignoring the dismayed Apothecary Hong Yun, the duo walked out of the room. Under Apothecary Mu's lead, they soon arrived at a tightly sealed room. It was similar to the room where the wall of dilemma was affixed in the physician guild. There was nothing else other than a gigantic wall in the room. Apothecary Hong and Jiang Chen tagged along as well, curious to see what pill formula was Apothecary Mu going to request for. What I need is the pill formula for the grade 4 frigidine pill. Zhang Xian sent a telepathic message to Apothecary Mu. Apothecary Mu nodded. Upon placing the apothecary emblem representing his identity into the aperture on the wall immediately burst into life. With swift movements, he wrote 3 words on the wall of pill formulae, frigidine pill. The procedures to using the wall of pill formulae wasn't too complex. One just had to activate the wall and write down the name of the pill. As long as the pill wasn't too far beyond one's capability, the headquarter would usually agree to the request. Since there were 3-star apothecaries in Tianwu Kingdom Apothecary Guild, it shouldn't be a problem to request for a grade 4 pill formula, although it would be impossible for them to ask for a grade 5 one. The same rules applied for other apothecary guilds as well. A moment later, the wall trembled and a line of words appeared: payment, 3 spirit stones or a transmogrification bamboo grass. This is the price for the pill formula. Staring intently at the words that appeared on the wall, Jiang Chen asked. It is a convention to pay a price when requesting for a pill formula from the headquarter. Otherwise, the wall of pill formulae could be abused, and the headquarter might find itself constantly in a hectic state. Apothecary Hong replied. Then, with slight doubt in his tone, he said, however, usually, a grade 4 pill formula should only cost 1 spirit stone. For this one to cost 3 spirit stones or a transmogrification bamboo grass, that's way too overpriced. What's a transmogrification bamboo grass? It's an extremely precious and rare medicinal herb. Even at Xianyuan Conferred Kingdom, it's one of the hardest herbs to obtain, needless to say, here. Apothecary Hong Yun shook his head in pity. This is way too expensive, it's impossible for Apothecary Mu to afford it. Just as Apothecary Hong had guessed, upon seeing those words, Apothecary Mu's complexion immediately turned extremely awful. Initially, he had thought that if the price wasn't too high, he could help to foot the bill. But 3 spirit stones, this was simply too expensive. Even as a 2-star pinnacle apothecary, it was beyond his means. As for the transmogrification bamboo grass, he had only heard of its existence from the books. Guild leader Lu, "I'm sorry," Apothecary Mu turned to Zhang Xian and apologized. The reason why the other party was at the Apothecary Guild was to help raise his daughter's cultivation. He thought that he could at least be of some help to the other party, especially given his identity. Yet, in the end, he found himself unable to contribute anything at all. This is the price for the pill formula. How do I pay the spirit stones through this wall? Upon realizing what was going on, Zhang Xian asked doubtfully. Given how it was possible to communicate via the wall of pill formulae, the pill formula could also be written and, thus, sent to them through the wall. However, spirit stones and transmogrification bamboo grass were tangible objects. How could they send it over through the wall? Simple. As long as you promise to make the payment, someone will be dispatched here, arriving within half a month, to claim it. As long as the payment is confirmed, the other side will send the pill formula over. Apothecary Mu replied. Half a month? Zhang Xian was speechless. If that was the case, what was the difference between this and buying a grade 4 pill straight? It was only because buying a pill would require a minimum of half a month that he chose to request for a pill formula instead. Despite all the trouble he went through, he simply went in a circle and ended up returning back at the starting point. It's also possible for the pill formula to be sent over on the spot. One just has to leave his emblem here as a guarantee. However, this would mean that one was putting his position as an apothecary on the line to guarantee the payment. After the pill formula is sent over, someone will come over to claim the items within half a month. After a moment of hesitation, Apothecary Mu continued, "I don't mind leaving my emblem here as a guarantee, just that I really don't have the means to pay for it." Once the other party comes and demands payment, if he could produce 3 spirit stones, it wouldn't be a problem for him to put his emblem on the line. However, he had nothing in his hands now. Once the other party comes to claim the payment and he fails to hand it over, he would be in deep trouble. His career as a 2-star pinnacle apothecary would come to an end, and all of the hard work he had poured in the past few decades would be wasted. It's just a grade 4 pill formula, how can it be so expensive? Upon understanding the entire matter, Zhang Xian was dismal. He was still wondering how he could procure spirit stones for his own use when the other party demanded 3 at once. Putting aside the fact that he didn't have any spirit stones now, even if he had any, he still needed them for his own cultivation. To exchange it for a pill formula, you must be jesting. Is there any other way? Zhang Xian asked Apothecary Mu. Other than physical objects, one could pay using knowledge and information as well. As long as the other party deems what one offers to be valuable, it can be accepted as the payment as well. At this moment, Apothecary Mu shook his head with a bitter smile. However, the person on the other side of the wall of pill formulae is at least a 4-star apothecary, a figure we can't possibly match up with. The knowledge and secrets we know of are probably worthless to them. As a 4-star apothecary, the other party's understanding of pill forging had already reached an unfathomable level. As a mere 2-star pinnacle apothecary, how could Apothecary Mu possibly offer any knowledge of interest to the other party? Knowledge can be used as payment as well. Zhang Xian was dumbstruck for a short moment before a gleam flashed in his eyes. Is that really true? Apothecary Mu and the others were stunned to see Zhang Xian's bizarre reaction. Could he, as a physician, really produce information of interest to a 4-star apothecary? Alright, allow me. Ignoring the shock the others were experiencing, Zhang Xian mused for a moment before lifting up a brush to write a line of words on the wall of pill formulae. Upon seeing the contents of his words, Apothecary Hongyi staggered. He nearly spewed blood and fainted. Apothecary Mu was the same as well. Tears streamed down his face. This wall of pill formulae was activated using his emblem, so his name was on it. Guild leader Lu, the words that you wrote, you are truly escorting me straight to my doom. Woo-woo, what did I do wrong to make you hate me so much? An austere person, Qi Xingyu was a 4-star intermediate apothecary of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. He had always been in charge of overseeing the wall of pill formulae. The wall of pill formulae was connected to many Tier 1 kingdoms, and it was used as a platform to resolve the problems those guilds faced. Usually, there was nothing much for him to do, however today, upon reaching his position, he realized that it was activated. It's from Tier 1 Tianwu Kingdom. Qi Xingyu could see the location and the identity of the person who activated the wall on the other side. Mu Yangfeng. Casually flipping open the list of apothecaries, Qi Xingyu browsed through the names and frowned. A 2-star pinnacle apothecary? He must have just succeeded the 3-star apothecary examination and has yet to change his emblem. Even so, to activate the wall of pill formulae and request for a grade 4 pill formula right after clearing his examination, isn't he being too impatient? At which, his face turned grim. Apothecaries who possessed an earnest desire to learn were welcomed by Qi Xingyu. However, one should at least reach 3-star pinnacle before requesting for a grade 4 pill formula to study. Clearly, the other party was being overambitious. Despite having barely reached a rank of 3-star, not to mention, you haven't even changed your emblem yet, to request for a grade 4 pill formula, are you taking this as a joke? Furthermore, he even asked for the formula of the grade 4 intermediate frigidine pill. After seeing the pill formula that the other party wanted, his rage crescendoed. Apothecaries who had just cleared the 3-star examination would still be having difficulties forging a grade 3 primary pill, and yet, the other party was actually asking for a grade 4 intermediate pill formula. Were all the apothecaries so overambitious nowadays? Harumphing coldly, he wrote out the price for the exchange. You want a grade 4 pill formula? Fine, I'll give it to you. However, you'll have to be able to pay the price for it first. If you can't, you better pull down your head and study humbly. Thus, he intentionally inflated the price by 3 times so as to deter the other party. As expected, as soon as he wrote those words, the wall of pill formulae fell silent. Looks like the best way to deal with such ignorant fellows is to scare them off, Qi Xingyu muttered silently to himself as he poured himself a cup of tea and sipped on it. He thought the other party would back down upon facing this obstacle, but contrary to his expectations, the wall of pill formulae suddenly shone once more, and a line of words slowly floated into appearance. I don't have the spirit stones you're asking for, but I can answer any issues you are facing in your pill forging. If you have any queries, feel free to ask. Pooh! He spurted out his tea. With widened eyes, Qi Xingyu coughed non-stop. Feel free to ask. Answer my question. In that instant, 10,000 divine beasts stampeded across Qi Xingyu's head. The heck? I am a 4-star intermediate apothecary. Even if I really had a query, I would consult a 5-star apothecary rather than a 3-star primary apothecary like you. To utter such arrogant words, aren't you afraid of suffering a retribution from the heaven? He thought that he could scare the other party off by inflating the price by 3 times, but what he received instead was the other party's conceited response. Rage immediately flurried through his body. Apothecary Qi. What's wrong? Seething with rage, he was just about to teach this disrespectful fellow a lesson when, Jia, the door to the room suddenly opened, and an elder walked in. The head of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance Apothecary Guild, Su Xing. He was the only 4-star pinnacle apothecary within the entire Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Nothing much, just that I'm facing an arrogant fellow from Tianwu Kingdom. Suppressing his anger, Qi Xingyu harumphed. An arrogant fellow? Guild leader Su was stunned for an instant. Given their prestige as the headquarter of the Apothecary Guild for the Tier 1 kingdoms, very rarely did members from lower branches dare to anger them. Qi Xingyu quickly recounted the matter to him, and he widened his eyes in shock at the entire matter. His gaze subconsciously turned to the wall of pill formulae with a look of incredulity. Your head. A 3-star apothecary who had only achieved his breakthrough recently was actually telling a 4-star intermediate apothecary to shoot his question, as though a teacher? This was no longer arrogance, more like having a screw loose. After all, no rational person would dare to spout such words to a high-ranked apothecary. It was no wonder why Qi Xingyu had flown into a rage. Even Su Xing himself felt dizzy-headed just by listening to the recount of the incident. That Apothecary Mu's head must have surely suffered a stroke for him to dare to utter such nonsense. Show me his background. As the headquarter of all apothecary guilds in the lands of Myriad Kingdom Alliance, they had the information of all apothecaries within the area. Soon, a file was delivered over by an apprentice, and grabbing it, they began browsing through it and, that fellow didn't seem to possess any exceptional aptitude. To put it in short, he was nothing but average. It had been an entire 17 years since the other party had reached 2-star pinnacle. How could he act so arrogantly when he had only just achieved a breakthrough? Was his head crushed by a door or did some savage beast accidentally kick it? Su Xing blinked his eyes, stupefied. Guild leader, what should we do? Qi Xingyu harumphed. Should we indict this fellow of insubordination and strip him of his license? There was a common trait shared by many of the occupations in the continent, strict hierarchy. Lower-ranked members were expected to treat those of higher-ranked members with a high degree of respect. And this was an official rule. Given how arrogant this fellow had spoken, they could easily charge him with insubordination and strip him of his apothecary license. Calm down, there's no need to rush it. We should at least test him with a question first. It won't be too late to charge him after he fails to answer it correctly. After a moment of hesitation, guild leader Su replied. One thing the world didn't lack was eccentric individuals, and they couldn't possibly strip him of his apothecary license just because he had spoken arrogantly. Perhaps, he might really have the strength to back his words up. All right. Qi Xingyu nodded. It just happens that I have a question that I wanted to consult guild leader but haven't gotten the chance to yet. I'll pose the question to him and I hope that guild leader can help me vet his answer. If he were to answer it erroneously, I'll make sure to knock deeply into his dense head that the prestige of a high-ranked apothecary is not to be challenged. Guild leader Su Xing nodded. Upon seeing the other party's agreement, Qi Xingyu picked up a brush and started writing on the wall. For the forging of the Constellation Sea Pill, Purple Pearl Grass, Evening Sunflower, and 3-leafed green have to be fused together. Why would there be a loss in the medicinal properties of the medicinal herbs despite procedures being followed strictly? Seeing the question Qi Xingyu jotted down, Su Xing nodded his head. This question was indeed rather difficult. Many 4-star apothecaries faced similar problems while trying to forge the Constellation Sea Pill. Back then, he was no exception as well. A lot of research and experiments had to be done before he managed to arrive at the correct answer. However, to actually pose a question which he himself didn't have the answer to, Qi Xingyu must be truly infuriated. Even some 5-star apothecaries would find it hard to answer this question. It's only due to my good fortunes that I chanced by the answer in an ancient manual. Given such, how could a person who had barely reached 3-star possibly answer it? Harboring such thoughts, Su Xing turned to look at the wall of pill formulae, curious to see what the arrogant fellow on the other side would reply with. Meanwhile, on the other end of the wall, Apothecary Mu wasn't the only one who had flown into a frenzy. Even Jiang Chen and Apothecary Hongyi's eyebrows were twitching furiously. This was no longer just a simple case of wreaking havoc, this a challenge to the other party's authority, a clear case of insubordination. If the other party decided to indict Mu Yangfeng of this crime, they could easily strip his qualification as an apothecary straight. The elder on the other end of the wall must be infuriated. With twitching lips, Apothecary Hongyi sent a look of sympathy to Mu Yangfeng. The countdown to the end of his career had already started. Tick 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 wang. Shaking his head, the wall suddenly flashed and a line of words appeared. Constellation sea pill. Purple pearl grass, evening sunflower, and three-leafed green. Seeing the content of the question, Apothecary Hongyi was completely bewildered. He didn't even know what the constellation sea pill was, so how could he possibly know the reason behind the loss of the medicinal properties of these three herbs? He immediately sneaked a peek at Mu Yangfeng and saw a constipated look on the other party's face. Then, he turned his gaze to the culprit of this entire mess, Lu Cheng. That fellow seemed to be confused as well, seemingly uncomprehending of the question. Just as Apothecary Hongyi was wondering how Lu Cheng was going to resolve this mess, the other party suddenly stood up and touched the wall of pill formulae. Then, picking up a brush, he began writing once more. Dry the purple pearl grass under extreme heat for 3 days, remove the roots of the 10th sunflower, and choose a 3-leafed green with a maturity of 5 years and below. Words soon appeared on the wall of pill formulae, and upon reading its content, Qi Xinyu abruptly stood up, and his nose flared in anger. Nonsense, what utter nonsense! The purple pearl grass possesses Yin attribute and it thrives in dark places. Once exposed to extreme heat, its medicinal property would dissipate swiftly. It wouldn't even survive for a day, less 3. As for the evening sunflower, it is known to bloom only under the evening sun. Only with the setting of the celestial flame would the earthen flames be reignited, and through its roots, the evening sunflower absorbs the earthen flames to nourish itself and develop its medicinal properties. If the roots, where the bulk of its medicinal property is harnessed in, were to be removed, how much of medicinal property could it possibly retain? As for the 3-leafed green, under normal circumstances, its maturity would require at least 10 years. At just 5, it would be no different from other ordinary grasses, devoid of any medicinal property. If I were to do as he says, the loss of medicinal properties is just a small matter. I fear that there might even be none at all. The more Qi Xinyu spoke, the faster his words got. Cracking sounds originating from his clenching of fists echoed loudly in the room. There were number 4-star apothecaries who had the experience of forging constellation sea pill who didn't know the medicinal properties of these 3 main ingredients. The advice the other party offered were a complete joke, utter rubbish. Guild leader, there's no need to consider it anymore. There's clearly something very wrong with this fellow's head. I'll apply for the stripping of his apothecary license right now. Harumphing coldly, Qi Xinyu turned to look at guild leader Su to seek his judgment on this matter. But to his surprise, he only saw the latter, who he had known to be able to keep his composure under all circumstances, staring at the wall with widened eyes, completely dumbstruck. Guild leader, he couldn't help but shake the other party to wake him from his daze. Ah! Only then did Su Xing finally recover from his shock and, with quivering lips, he replied, his method is correct. Correct? It was Qi Xinyu's turn to be dumbstruck this time around. Are you for real? Due to its Yin attribute, cold energy easily accumulates in the purple pearl grass, and during the forging of the constellation sea pill, this cold energy would hinder the fusing of the medicinal herbs, thus inducing the dissipation of medicinal properties. As such, it has to be exposed to extreme heat to remove the cold energy. As for the evening sunflower, it serves primarily as a mediating factor. While its roots do possess incredible medicinal properties, it is, in fact, excessive. It only neutralizes the medicinal properties of the purple pearl grass. The same goes for the 3-leafed green as well. This is what I read on an ancient manual. Even 5-star apothecaries would find themselves stumped by this question. How did he know this? Qi Xinyu was dumbfounded. Guild leader, you mean that the solution he proposed is correct? That's right. Not only is it correct, it is perfect. I have tried it out myself and there's no problem with it. Su Xing nodded. How is this possible? Qi Xinyu felt as though he was going insane. He thought that the other party was just an arrogant fellow who had just passed the 3-star apothecary examination. He couldn't have expected that the other party would be able to solve such a difficult question, which even he was stumped by. Are you for real? Am I the 4-star intermediate apothecary, or is he? For you write these words? Guild leader Lu, is it really alright for you write these words? In the apothecary guild, Mu Yangfeng even felt like dying now. He should have stopped the other party from writing anything. It was one thing for you to know what the constellation C pill was, but you should at least check on it. To write the answer right after touching the wall, aren't you being too casual? Even though Apothecary Mu didn't know the reason behind the loss of medicinal property in the purple pearl grass, evening flower sun, and 3-leafed green, as a 2-star pinnacle apothecary, he still knew a little about them. Exposing a cold attribute medicinal herb to the extreme heat, removing the roots of the evening sunflower, to demand for the maturity of the 3-leafed green to be as low as possible. What the heck are you writing? Anyone who knew the least bit about pill forging would know that this was utter bullshit. It deviated completely from the core principles of pill forging. Was guild leader Lu really trying to do him in? Without a doubt, the 4-star apothecary on the other end would surely be stomping his feet in anger. If the other party could, he might have rushed over to kill him this instant. Initially, he was extremely grateful to the other party for guiding him to forge a grade 3 pill. He felt as though the other party had brought him to the peak of life, but at this moment, he realized that he was just imagining things. The other party was bringing him to the very top of the mountain before pushing him down into the valley. Otherwise, have you ever seen a low-ranked apothecary speaking to a high-ranked apothecary like that? Just as his lips twitched furiously and he felt that he was doomed, the wall before him lit up once more. I'm done for, certain that what that would be written on the wall would be his punishment, his heart turned cold. Unwilling to face reality, he immediately turned his head away to avoid seeing the content of the message. But to his astonishment, he heard Apothecary Hongyi breathing heavily, as though he was suffering a heart attack out of shock. Apothecary Mu, look. With a shaking finger, he pointed at the wall. Doubtful, Apothecary Mu turned to take a look, and with a glance, he felt as though his heart was about to burst apart. He suddenly froze on the spot. It took a long while before he managed to utter a word. What is going on? Bright and forceful words appeared on the wall. Correct, this can strike off the payment required for the frigidine pill formula. Correct? Apothecary Mu rubbed his eyes and confirmed that he wasn't seeing things. He found the sight before him impossible to comprehend. The few casual words that guild leader Lu wrote with a confused look on his face was the correct answer. Am I dreaming? It's good that it's correct. With this, my career should be fine. Relief gushed through his body. Since it was correct, it was unlikely that the other party would strip him of his apothecary license for insubordination. At the very least, his career was safe now. Heaving a sigh of relief, he was just about to say something when the wall in front glowed once more and a line of words appeared. Grade 4 Pinnacle, Energy Aperture Pill. It is common for the cauldron to explode during the forging process. How can this problem is solved? Grade 4 Pinnacle Pill. Energy Aperture Pill. I've heard of this pill before. It is a grade 4 Pinnacle Pill, and even 5-star apothecaries would find it hard to forge. After consumption, it will open up a person's energy apertures, thus boosting their cultivation. As such, it is an extremely valuable and sought-after pill. The other party is posing a question on it. The entire room fell silent. Was the 4-star apothecary on the other side insane? Despite guild leader Lu's lack of respect, not only did the other party not pursue the matter, the other party even continued asking questions. Could it be that this guild leader Lu was really that incredible as to be able to even guide a 4-star apothecary on his pill forging? This, staring at the young man not too far away with a bizarre look, Apothecary Mu was just about to step forward and discuss with him on how to solve this problem when the other party picked up a brush and started writing once more. Taking a look at the words the other party wrote, Mu Yangfeng, who had just barely heaved a sigh of relief at having preserved with career, saw his vision go dark. His heart nearly leapt out of his mouth. Apothecary Hongyi and Jiang Qin fared no better than him. They felt their knees caving in, and they swayed weakly on the spot. Brother, you are about to bash through the heavens. On the wall, 4 words shone brightly, price, 3 spirit stones. This fellow, does he really think that we're trying to learn from him? On the other end of the wall, upon seeing the words Zhang Xian wrote, Qi Xingyu nearly erupted. Right after recovering from the shock from the other party's answer, he felt that there was a need to continue testing the other party to see whether he possessed true capability or merely lucked out in his guesses. Thus guild leader Su raised the current question to see what the other party would answer. However, the other party simply replied with 4 words, price your head. I am testing you, a 3-star apothecary, in my capacity as a 4-star apothecary of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance Apothecary Guild. And yet, you demand payment? The heck? This is a test. A test. Don't you get it? Do you really think that we don't know the answer and that we are consulting you on it? Agree to his request. After hesitating for a moment, Su Xing nodded. Agree? This time, Qi Xingyu was stunned. Actually, I don't know the answer to this question as well. I'm just curious to see what kind of answer he would give. Su Xing replied. You don't know? Qi Xingyu fell to the ground. You are the most capable apothecary in the entire guild, reaching a rank of 4-star pinnacle. What do you mean by you don't know the answer? Aren't we supposed to be testing him? Why did it become a consulting session instead? Besides, if you don't know the answer as well, how can we determine the authenticity of his answer? Even though Qi Xingyu was shocked, under the persistence of the guild leader, he still wrote, agreed. After which, the other party replied with 2 words, pill formula. After hesitating for a moment, Qi Xingyu wrote the pill formula for energy aperture pill on the wall. Wang. Soon, words appeared on the wall once more. The medicinal herbs required for the energy aperture pill are volatile, and they react violently with one another. Thus, one has to first soak the medicinal herbs in flowing water to remove its volatility before adding in a stalk of tsushi grass. I'll try it out. The solution recorded on the wall was quite simple. After taking a look, guild leader Su immediately tested it out. Not too long later, he came to a stop. Catching the scent of the fragrance from the cauldron, he was dumbstruck. It's correct. To think that the method the other party provided was actually correct. To think that a question which even a 4-star pinnacle apothecary like him couldn't solve was answered by a fellow who had just become a 3-star apothecary so easily. On top of that, the answer was flawless. What in the world was going on? The person on the side probably isn't Mu Yangfeng. Apothecary Qi, go and check who he is. After a moment of silence, he suddenly came to a realization. If Apothecary Mu was that capable, he would have become a famous figure long ago. How could he possibly remain unknown for so long? Alright, I'll head to Xianyuan Conferred Kingdom now. Upon coming to the same conclusion, Qi Xingyu hurriedly nodded his head. Tianwu Kingdom was a territory of Xianyuan Conferred Kingdom. As such, he had to head to the latter first. However, hold it for a moment first. Let's first sound the bell and summon all of the apothecaries in the alliance to the guild now. Guild leader Su instructed. Yes. Qi Xingyu nodded, turned around, and left. Alright, done. After collecting the frigidine pill formula in the library, Zhang Xian chuckled. With this formula, he would be able to forge the frigidine pill to awaken Zhao Ye's unique constitution. Not only did he not spend any money on the pill formula, someone would even be sending spirit stones to him. In a sense, he had profited from this deal. Right, when will the other party send the spirit stones over? Zhang Xian asked. Such a thing has never happened, so I'm not too sure either. However, based on my estimations, it should take around half a month. Mu Yangfeng contemplated for a moment before answering. At the start, he was shocked, but eventually, everything faded and only numbness remained. When requesting for a pill formula from the headquarters, everyone had to pay a heavy price. Yet, not only did this fellow manage to get his pill formula, he even earned some spirit stones from the headquarters. If not for personally witnessing this sight, he wouldn't believe it even if someone were to coerce him at knife point. At this moment, his head still felt light, as though he was in a dream. Half a month? That's still all right, Zhang Xian nodded. It was quite good for him that he would be getting 3 spirit stones in half a month's time. Guild leader Lu, what do we do now? Mu Yangfeng asked. Since the pill formula is here, naturally, we have to forge it. Help me gather these medicinal herbs, Zhang Xian said. Even though the frigidine pill is a grade 4 pill, based on what I've seen just now, the medicinal herbs required aren't too rare. We should be able to find all of them in our apothecary guild. However, even if we manage to gather all of the medicinal herbs, without a grade for apothecary here, we can't forge it. Mu Yangfeng looked at guild leader Lu doubtfully. Apothecary Hongyi was also perplexed. The most proficient apothecary in the entire Tianwu Kingdom's apothecary guild was the guild leader at 3-star primary. No one else here was capable of forging a grade 4 pill. Even if they managed to get the pill formula and gather the medicinal herbs, they were unable to do anything at all. Who says that it is impossible to forge a grade 4 pill without a 4-star apothecary? Zhang Xian waved his hands casually. Then, he turned to Apothecary Mu and said, "Aren't you here? You can just forge it for me." Shocked, Mu Yangfeng nearly fainted on the spot. He was well aware of his pill forging skills. He was only at the level of an ordinary 2-star pinnacle, and the only reason why he successfully forged a grade 3 pill was because of the other party's guidance grade 4. He didn't even dare to harbor such thoughts. Don't worry. Let's just gather the medicinal herbs for now, I'll instruct you on it later on. Knowing what the other party was worrying about, Zhang Xian consoled him. You'll instruct me? After hesitating for a moment, Mu Yangfeng looked at Zhang Xian doubtfully. Can I really succeed? If it was anyone else, Apothecary Mu would have surely thought that he was bragging. However, he had seen too much miracles from this youngster from the moment he met him until now. Perhaps, the other party might really be able to guide him to successfully forge a grade 4 pill. Don't worry. Even if we don't succeed, we'll just fail. At the very worst, the cauldron will only explode, Zhang Xian answered casually. The cauldron will only explode? Mu Yangfeng's lips twitched and he nearly fainted. Do you know how strong the explosion will be? If the cauldron explodes while forging a grade 4 pill? Even though it was only a level between grade 3 and grade 4, there was a qualitative difference between the two. It was just like how a phantom equipment and spirit equipment were two completely different concepts. Even a Jizuan realm expert could be blown to smithereens if unprepared against a grade 4 pill explosion. Needless to say, Zhongshe realm cultivators like them. To think that you said it will only explode if it truly exploded, the entire apothecary guild would disappear from the face of this world. It will blow the entire apothecary guild up. After hearing Apothecary Mu's explanation, Zhang Xian was taken aback. He thought that, at the very worst, an explosion similar to that when Mu forged the pill in the Beast Hall would occur. He didn't think that the explosive power of a grade 4 pill would be so great. On top of that, the medicinal herbs of a grade 4 pill are also extremely valuable. Even though our guild has them all, the total cost of them all adds up to a huge fortune. A single set would cost around 3 spirit stones. In terms of gold coins, it is impossible to buy it without 100 million, Apothecary Mu continued. 3 spirit stones? Costs more than 100 million gold coins. Before Apothecary Mu could finish his words, the young man before him trembled. Then, He quickly turned to the wall of pill formulae with crimson eyes, picked up the brush, and started writing. Is the apothecary on the other side still there? Do you have any other questions? 3 spirit stones for 1, the more the better. I can answer all of your queries now, Mu Yangfeng. Jiang Cheng and Apothecary Hongyi. On the other side. Guild leader Su Xing. Chapter 366, Tenacious Lu Chong. Upon hearing the price of the medicinal herbs, Zhang Xian's heart crumbled. After spending an entire night of effort to earn 3 spirit stones, he only managed to earn enough to buy the medicinal herbs. This is robbery. Do you think that it is easy for me to earn spirit stones? Do you all need to go that far? Holding his brush, Zhang Xian waited for a very long time, but the other party didn't reply at all. Clearly he had no other questions. Stingy. To think that he's still a 4-star apothecary, it's just a small sum of money. Scrooge. Tossing the brush aside, Zhang Xian bellowed. What the heck is this? Aren't you a 4-star apothecary? Aren't you a huge figure in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance? To be unwilling to even spare 3 spirit stones. I've never seen someone as miserly as you, Scrooge. Mu Yangfeng and Apothecary Hong trembled. Brother, you're the Scrooge, all right? Since the other party has no questions, he can't possibly give spirit stones to you for free to scold a 4-star apothecary. Stingy and Scrooge. You're probably the only one in the entire kingdom. Guild leader Lu will take the spirit stones from the headquarters as the compensation for the medicinal herbs. I'll prepare the rest for you now. Afraid that the other party would do extreme things once more, Mu Yangfeng hurriedly said and left. This guild leader Lu was indeed a person of great capabilities, but his guts were too huge for Mu Yangfeng to bear. Mu Yangfeng had always faced higher-tier apothecaries with utmost respect. Yet, the other party didn't seem concerned about the hierarchy at all, spewing criticisms without the slightest hesitation. Mu Yangfeng was afraid that he would die of shock if he remained here. Just as Apothecary Hongyi and Jiang Chen were about to leave, the young man turned to look at them with a bright smile. With glowing eyes, he asked, those Scrooge don't even dare to ask their questions once they heard that they needed to pay. What about you two? Feel free to shoot. As long as you have the spirit stones to pay, I'll solve any problems you have. We don't have any. Frightened, their faces turned pale. They quickly shook their hands. No questions? Then are you all ill? I can treat you as well, Zhang Xian continued. Apothecary Hongyi and Jiang Chen. The efficiency of the Apothecary Guild was one to behold. In less than an hour, they had already gathered all of the medicinal herbs required for the forging of the frigidine pill. After confirming again and again that the duo didn't require any treatment, Zhang Xian followed behind Mu Yangfeng with a regretful expression, and before long, they entered one of the pill forging chambers prepared for the apothecaries in the guild. The best cauldrons were here, and a formation was also set up in the surroundings. Even if a cauldron explosion were to occur, the operations of the guild wouldn't be affected at all. Guild leader Lu, are you sure that you want me to forge it? Looking at the medicinal herbs and cauldron before him, Apothecary Mu hesitated. Grade 4 pills were also known as spirit pills. Even if one didn't store it in a jade box, it would absorb spiritual energy from the world automatically, thus preventing its quality from deteriorating with time. Legend has it that someone had once dug out pills of this level from an ancient tomb, and despite countless years had passed, not only did the pills not lose their effectiveness, they even became more potent. Some of the pill at formation level reached satiation and even perfection. This kind of pill didn't just have a high demand on one's pill forging skill, it also required one to possess superior cultivation. Otherwise, if something were to crop up and a cauldron explosion occurred, it would very possibly result in one's death. Even though guild leader Lu had asked for his help, Mu Yangfeng didn't have any confidence in himself at all. Later on, just strictly forge by my instructions. You mustn't make even the slightest mistake. At this moment, Zhang Xian's face was completely grave. After browsing through the books in the guild, Zhang Xian understood the difficulty of forging a grade 4 pill. Even though he was able to rectify all of the errors in the forging process through the Library of Heaven's Path, it was still an extremely difficult task to have a Zongshi successfully forge a grade 4 pill. Alright. Despite knowing of the risks that came with forging a grade 4 pill, Apothecary Mu also knew that this was a valuable experience. Even if he were to fail in the forging, it would definitely help bring his pill forging skills to new heights. Thus, he didn't hesitate for long before clenching his jaws and agreeing to it. The young man before him had created way too many miracles. Deep down, he had already developed a deep trust for the other party's capability. If he were to turn down this opportunity today, he knew that he would regret it for life. Let's start then. Mu Yangfeng meditated for a moment to reach his tip-top condition before walking forward to the cauldron. With a slight wave of his hands, a flame ignited beneath the cauldron. Xiong xiong xiong. Under the intense heat, the cauldron started to turn red. Add in the alfalfa flower. 2 breaths after, add in the motherwort grass. 14 breaths later, add in the cold frost leaf. Zhang Xian started to issue instructions non-stop. Mu Yangfeng followed all of Zhang Xian's instructions strictly, not daring to make the slightest mistake. Walala. Medicinal herbs were thrown into the cauldron one after another, slowly fusing with one another under the heat of the cauldron. Outside the pill forging chamber. To prevent interrupting the duo, Apothecary Hongyi and the others remained outside. Do you think that they will succeed? After a long moment, Jiang Chen asked. I've no idea either. It would be impossible for any other people, but this guild leader Lu cannot be understood by common sense. Apothecary Hongyi shook his head. Until now, he was still unable to gauge the full extent of Lu Cheng's ability. While requesting for a pill formula on the wall of pill formulae, he was able to solve a question which stumped even the 4-star apothecary on the other side of the wall, leaving the other party tongue-tied. His capability was way beyond imagination. Indeed. Jiang Chen felt a sense of defeat. He was the son of Pavilion Master Jiang, and he was considered as a genius as well. Even though he couldn't compare up to Mo Hongyi and Mo Yu, but he was considered as one of the most talented geniuses among his peers. He thought that even if he lost out to those two monsters in terms of talent, he could catch up to them through hard work. However, when he met Zhang Xian and guild leader Lu, he realized that there was a huge difference among geniuses as well. Despite being a physician, guild leader Lu was actually attempting to instruct a 2-star pinnacle apothecary to forge a grade 4 medicine just through his understanding of medicinal herbs. He felt like if he were to tell anyone about it, the other party would just think that he was a lunatic. However, regardless of whether he succeeds or not, Apothecary Mu's pill forging skill would surely rise greatly. In fact, with this experience, it is not entirely impossible for him to become a 4-star apothecary. Apothecary Hongyi felt deep regret. Even if this pill forging failed, just the experience itself would allow Apothecary Mu's pill forging skills to reach a whole new level. As long as he builds on it, it would just be a matter of time before the other party surpasses him. He could already see the seat of the guild leader falling to the Apothecary Mu and not him. If not for his bragging, this opportunity might be his. It's truly a huge pity. However, opportunities only present themselves once, and time couldn't be turned back. No matter how heavy the regret weighing down his heart was, it was all too late. In a small room in the Tianwu Academy, the naked Lu Chong slowly opened his eyes. Using a towel to wipe off the sweat which dripped off his body, he exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. It's already my 4th time. Looking at the bottle of medicinal powder, which was still more than half full, Lu Chong hesitated. Teacher said that my strength will reach my limit after 5 times. If so, the medicinal powder will become useless. In the past few trainings, I can sense that the effectiveness is getting worse and worse. Most probably, after the 5th time, my strength will only reach the level of Tongxian Realm Pinnacle. It'll still be difficult for me to exact vengeance. Lu Chong gritted his teeth. Lu Laoshi had once told him that it would take around 5 times before he would successfully cultivate the poison body. Thus, he had been cultivating doggedly in the last few days. As soon as he recovered, he would immediately continue with his training. Through his determination, his strength grew swiftly. However, a problem also soon became apparent to him. That was the effects of the poison powder was slowly weakening. The previous time, his improvement was already less than half of his first session. He could foresee that it wouldn't take long before the poison powder became completely ineffective. Since it comes down to this, I should just use all of the poison powder at once. Tenacity flashed across his eyes. Strictly following his teacher's instructions, the bottle should still be around half full by the time he completed the 5 sessions. Since the effects of the 5th session were going to be minimal, what would happen if he tried increasing the dosage? To exact my vengeance, I'll have to go all out. Lu Chong gritted his teeth, and without using the silver needle, he poured all of the poison powder directly at his acupoint. Dabbing a little bit of poison on his acupoints through a silver needle and smearing it directly on his skin were 2 very different concepts. Even if Zhang Xian was here, he would definitely think that the other party had gone mad. Boom! A heart-piercing pain suddenly struck him, and intense vertigo caused Lu Chong's body to sway vigorously. I can't die yet, I need to exact my vengeance first. Father, mother, and big sister, I will avenge all of you. Familiar faces flashed across his mind, and Lu Chong howled furiously. Of his entire clan consisting of 137 members, he was the only one left. How could he die before revenging them? Gugu. The lethal poison seeped into his blood vessels and flowed through his entire body. Excruciating pain tore his entire body. If there was such a thing as hell, this must be it. Compared to the pain he felt during the first time he came into contact with the poison powder, the suffering he was undergoing now was 10 times worse. If not for his increased tolerance to pain after the past few days of suffering, he might not have even persevered past a single breath. Even so, he felt a strong sense of dizziness clouding his head, and it seemed as though death was looming right on top of him. Teacher has high expectations of me, father, mother, big sister, and the others are still waiting for me to avenge them. Hang on, bellowing tenaciously, Lu Chong bit on his tongue tightly. Blood slowly trickled down the corner of his mouth. For the past 2 years, he had been keeping completely silent while cultivating as though his life was on the line. What was that for? Despite the pain and the risk of death, he chose to cultivate the poison body. What was that for? As long as my enemies aren't dead, I, Lu Chong, cannot die. Boom! After what seemed like an eternity, the pain finally started to fade. Only then did Lu Chong's mental state loosen, and his vision immediately turned dark and he fainted. Before he fainted, the poison powder dissolved in a surge of incredibly pure Jinqi and slowly fused with his body, causing his strength to rise. This Jinqi was the one which Zhang Xian left in Lu Chong's body when the latter made the vow to not divulge the techniques to others. If it wasn't for it protecting his heart, no matter how strong Lu Chong's will was, it was impossible for him to survive the onslaught of the lethal poison. For some reason, under the onslaught of the lethal poison, the Jinqi seeped into his body and augmented the flexibility and strength of his muscles. Just like that, his strength exceeded that of the foreseen limit of Tongxian Realm Pinnacle. Apothecary Hongyi and Jiang Chen waited for nearly 2 hours before the pill forging chamber opened and 2 figures walked out. They were Apothecary Mu and guild leader Lu. At this moment, the duo's faces were white and they looked exhausted. Sweat soaked their clothes, and their appearance was nothing short of unkempt. Could it be that, Gedeng, upon seeing the appearance of the duo, an ominous premonition appeared in their heads as they hurried up to the duo? Chapter 367, Mo Hongyi fell into the fecal drain. How did it go? Apothecary Hongyi stepped forward and asked. Success. Mu Yangfeng was exhausted, but excitement twinkled in the depths of his eyes. He turned to look at guild leader Lu in reverence. Having forged alongside him, Mu Yangfeng finally understood how deep his understanding of pill forging was. This wasn't a level that one could reach based solely on one's understanding of medicinal herbs. Even though he had followed the other party's instructions strictly, several crises still occurred throughout the process. It wasn't because he had made a mistake, but because his cultivation was too low. Tianwu Kingdom was a decently powerful kingdom, but it still wasn't capable of forging grade 4 pills yet. For the forging of the pill, maintaining the flame, as well as the temperature of the cauldron, required jinqi. There were many times that the pill forging nearly failed due to the depletion of his jinqi. If not for the many regeneration pills that he had forged throughout the years, he might have died of exhaustion then and there. Every time his jinqi ran low and a crisis occurred, this guild leader Lu would use inconceivable but surprisingly effective means to salvage the situation. Even though it seemed as though failure was inevitable, he produced miracle after miracle, which led to the ultimate success. It was as though he could see the situation in the cauldron with his own eyes, and he knew what he had to do to prevent an explosion. He truly couldn't imagine how someone of the other party's age could possess such vast and deep knowledge of pill forging. Just like Apothecary Hongyi had guessed, he had learned many things through this pill forging. Regardless of whether it was his skill or his mental fortitude, he had experienced a huge growth. It probably wouldn't be long before he managed to forge grade 3 primary or even intermediate pills independently. Success. Seeing Apothecary Mu's look of admiration, Hongyi and Jiang Chen also turned to look at guild leader Lu, dumbstruck. To think that the other party could really create a miracle. This was result that one couldn't accept easily even when seeing it for oneself. After the successful forging of the frigidine pill, there was nothing left for Zhang Xian to do here. After a moment of rest, Zhang Xian started to help Mu Xueqing trigger the medicinal energy accumulated in her body. Apothecary Mu had prepared the medicinal fluid long ago, and Mu Xueqing had also reached the peak condition, allowing Zhang Xian to start on the treatment immediately. Using the silver needles as a medium, Zhang Xian infused the Heaven's Path Jinqi into the other party's body. As soon as that pure Jinqi came into contact with the accumulated medicinal energy within Mu Xueqing, it was as though a spark of flame had come into contact with gasoline. A huge flame was ignited, and massive energy started streaming through her entire body via her meridians. Pilipila. Crisp sounds, reminiscent of exploding bamboos, reverberated consecutively throughout her body as numerous acupoints were opened. Knowing that Mu Xueqing wouldn't be in any danger under the protection of the medicinal fluid, Zhang Xian bade Mu Yangfeng farewell and left the guild. After finding a remote alley, he disguised himself as Yang Xian and walked towards the residence. By the time he reached the residence, it was already late at night. It was fortunate that Zhao Ye was still awake. He passed the frigidine pill to her and instructed her to consume it as soon as possible. After which, he passed to her the sword beast tamer Wang gave him back at the beast hall. This sword was at a significantly higher tier than the one he broke, and it complemented Zhao Ye's disposition. After dealing with these miscellaneous matters, Zhang Xian suddenly felt a surge of fatigue, so he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. Honestly, he had underestimated the difficulty of forging the frigidine pill. If not for the Library of Heaven's Path instantaneous updates which allowed him to peer into the flaws of the forging, an explosion would have occurred. Keeping his mind working at maximum capacity had exhausted both his body and his soul, causing his face to pale. Seemed like he had to avoid doing matters beyond his strength. Otherwise, he might just die from exhaustion one day. By the time Zhang Xian woke up the next day, the sun was already up. After a good rest, he felt revitalized. After asking the others, he found out that Zhao Ye had gone into seclusion to cultivate. Thus, he delegated some instructions to son Chong before leaving the residence for Tianwu Academy. He hadn't met Lu Chong for 2 days already, so he felt that he should check on his condition now that he had the time. Teacher, you're here. As soon as Zhang Xian reached the entrance of the classroom, Meng Tao immediately rushed up to him. What's wrong? Zhang Xian looked at him. Meng Tao had always been a composed person. It was impossible for him to be waiting at the entrance of the classroom for him for nothing. Teacher, Sun Laoshe has been waiting for you since morning, and it has already been 2 hours since he arrived. Meng Tao quickly reported. Sun Cheng. Zhang Xian was taken aback. Wasn't that Mo Hongyi? Why would he look for him now? Walking into the room, he saw Mo Hongyi sitting quietly on a stool in the classroom, sipping quietly on a cup of tea. You're finally here. You sure kept me waiting. Upon seeing Zhang Xian walk in, Mo Hongyi flashed a bitter smile. Zhang Xian was indeed incredible. To pass the 2-star master teacher exam, Mo Hongyi had been holding himself up in the classroom, not daring to leave at all. Every single day, he would spend 8 to 10 hours conducting lessons so as to build trust with his students. This fellow spent less than an hour in his classroom every day and disappeared frequently, yet his students were still completely infatuated with him. They even went to the extent of fighting with Zhang Shi's students for his honor. This was truly maddening. Mo Hongyi had no choice but to submit to him. Let's go in to speak. The classroom was filled with students, so it wasn't a good location to speak. Thus, Zhang Xian beckoned Mo Hongyi into the mini tutoring room. I have 2 matters to discuss with you. Mo Hongyi dived straight into the topic. Firstly, the principal asked me to convince you to meet with Zhang Shi for a meal so that no conflict will evolve between you two over the students' fight. Meet with Zhang Shi. Zhang Xian blinked in shock. How can I agree to that, meeting with himself? And have a meal at that? How in the world can he do it? Who asked you to be so high profile? Seeing the fellow who had broken most of his records suffering from this dilemma, Mo Hongyi chuckled gleefully. You were only asked to act as an ordinary teacher, yet you went to the physician guild to take on the role of their guild leader, and the students you teach even insisted on fighting it out with Zhang Shi's students. Given how high profile you are, it will be difficult for you not to attract any attention. You were the one who put yourself in such an awkward position. Alright, let's not talk about this anymore. I know that you won't agree to it anyway. However, given the principal's attitude, if I tell him that I am unable to persuade you, he'll definitely come to look for you personally. At that time, it'll be difficult for you to turn him down. Mo Hongyi shook his head as he changed the topic. Let's talk about the second matter then. After the past few days of effort, I think the trust level of my students should have already reached 40. Thus, I intend to return to the Master Teacher Pavilion to end the examination. Your students also seem to hold a high level of trust in you, so why don't we go together? Once you end the examination, others will know that Lu Laoshe is Zhang Shi, and you will be able to get out of this dilemma. At the same time, your students will also stop their quarreling. After hesitating for a moment, Zhang Xian nodded. The condition that the Master Teacher Pavilion gave them was to earn a trust level of 40 from their students within 10 days in their disguised self. This time was just a limit on the examination. If one could achieve this feat earlier, one would be able to end this examination in advance. However, if it turned out to be a fail, the students would definitely know their true identity, making it impossible for them to continue on with the examination. If so, it would be a fail for their 2-star master teacher examination. After the past few days of guidance, putting Mu Xueqing and Lu Chong, who Zhang Xian were exceptionally close to his side, Meng Tao and the others were also completely obedient to his words. Even if their trust level in him wasn't too high, Zhang Xian was confident that it had already reached 40, allowing him to pass the examination. Seeing the other party agree to it, Mo Hongyi chuckled. Alright, then let's visit the Master Teacher Pavilion tomorrow morning then. Alright. Zhang Xian replied. This matter wasn't too complicated, so after coming to an agreement, Mo Hongyi bade his farewell and left. He wanted to continue on his lesson to make one last push. Returning back to the classroom, Zhang Xian guided Meng Tao and the others on their cultivation before asking, "Where's Lu Chong? Why isn't he here today? He should be cultivating." "I'll get him here," Meng Tao replied and left. As a student of the academy, Lu Chong lived in the dormitory. Knowing that it would take some time before Meng Tao can get Lu Chong here, Zhang Xian took a seat. While overlooking the student's cultivation, he poured himself a cup of tea and placed it to his lips. Just as his lips came into contact with the cup, he suddenly frowned. Dry earthen powder. Zhang Xian had never taken the Poison Master examination, but after taking in all of the books in the Poison Hall, he already possessed the capability of a 2-star pinnacle Poison Master. Even before coming into contact with the tea in the cup, he already noticed the lethal poison contained within. Dry earthen powder was a type of grade 2 pinnacle poison, and it was effective even on Zhongshe realm pinnacle experts. Even though it wasn't deadly, it could sap a person's energy completely and induce both nausea and diarrhea, leaving him in agony. Who would spike his teacup? And why? Frowning, Zhang Xian was just about to ask who had come into contact with his tea set when Meng Tao suddenly rushed back in with a bizarre and frantic expression. "Lu Laoshi, bad news. What's wrong? Has something happened to Lu Chong?" Seeing the other party's expression, Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up. He had told the other party to look for Lu Chong, yet the other party came back with a panicked expression. Did that fellow deviate from the cultivation technique he taught him, and a problem had occurred? If the student he taught during this period of time were to go berserk or die putting aside failing the 2-star master teacher examination, he might even be expelled. If it was in the past, given how he possessed the Library of Heaven's Path, being a master teacher or not meant nothing much to him. However, if he didn't become a 9-star master teacher before reaching 30, the innate fetal poison in him would act up, causing his death. He had to pass the examination. Even though he knew that there were other ways as well, there was no guarantee that he would be able to find them. If he couldn't find those solutions, there was no point knowing of their existence. The best chance that he had now was this. Others might deem it impossible, but to Zhang Xian, as long as he cultivated diligently and found the corresponding cultivation technique manuals he required, there was a high chance he could succeed. That shouldn't be it. I have sent in a surge of Heaven's Path Shinchi to protect his heart. Furthermore, he has already survived the hardest ordeal, so he shouldn't meet with any problem. Before leaving, Zhang Xian had made sure to double-check that the Jinqi he infused earlier was still within Lu Chang's body. Since he had survived even the hardest ordeal, there should be no reason why a problem would occur now. It's not Lu Chong. Meng Tao shook his head. A bizarre expression slowly unfurled on his face. It's Sun Qing Laoshi. What about him? Zhang Xian asked. With an awkward expression, Meng Tao replied, He fell into the fecal drain. Chapter 368, Two Methods in the Campus, the autumn wind blew and the tree rustled. I must say that Sun Laoshi's classes are indeed impressive. Walking along the corridor, Zhao Wuxing commented. Even though Sun Qing Laoshi, who came in at the same time as Lu Qing Laoshi, was outshone by the latter, he did possess true ability. It was just yesterday that Lu Changyan and he listened to a lesson from Sun Laoshi, and they benefited greatly from it. Indeed, his lessons are very good. I think that he's even better than Hu Laoshi. Lu Changyan nodded. Actually, the class which they wanted to listen into was Lu Laoshi's, but he was rarely around. They had looked for him a couple of times but to no avail. Eventually, when they heard the rumors that Sun Laoshi's classes were not bad as well, they went to attend his lessons. In an instant, they were astounded. Sun Laoshi may seem unimpressive, but his understanding of cultivation reached an unbelievable level. Even the most impressive star teacher in Tianwu Academy seemed to pale in comparison to him. Lu Laoshi and Sun Laoshi are people of great capability. But why would they be obscure before being accepted by the academy? While they were impressed by the means of the duo, they harbored their doubts as well. All gold shines. Given how capable the two teachers were, it should have been impossible to bury their radiance. They should have long been famous figures in a region, so how could they be only discovered now? I have no idea, but since the academy took them in, it must have looked into their backgrounds beforehand, so there should be no trouble. Lu Changyan shook his head. Actually, we need not pay too much heed to this matter, it is sufficient as long as their lecture is good. Let's listen to Sun Laoshi's lessons more frequently. The most important thing we have to do right now is raising our cultivation. Tianwu Academy had an open concept, and all students were allowed to enter classrooms freely to listen to the lectures of other teachers. For top geniuses like them, ordinary lessons were already ineffective. Only by going around the classes and broadening their horizons could they grow. You're right, I have a new idol now, on top of Zhang Shi and Lu Laoshi, Sun Laoshi. Zhao Wuxing chuckled. I feel the same as well. His ability to explain profound concepts so easily truly opens up my mind, Lu Changyan nodded. Halfway through his words, he suddenly froze. Then, he pointed to a direction and asked, "Look, isn't that Sun Laoshi?" Following the other party's finger, they saw a youngster staggering weakly with spiritless eyes. Who else could it be other than the formidable Sun Cheng Laoshi they just spoke of? What's wrong with him? Let's take a look. When they met the other party yesterday, he was still filled with energy and vigor. Why would he be reduced to such a state today? Could it be that he is in the midst of cultivating some powerful battle technique? Suddenly, a thought appeared in Zhao Wuxing's mind, and his eyes lit up in excitement. It was rumored that there was a powerful battle technique in Tianwu Kingdom which one could only execute when drunk. Even though the movements seemed sloppy, similar to that of a drunk person, it was profound and possessed great might. Sun Laoshi had touched on this battle technique when he was explaining and deciphering the various cultivation techniques and battle techniques. Upon seeing his current state, the duo couldn't help but think of this matter. It's possible. Lu Changyan nodded. He couldn't help but utter in amazement, such a profound movement. It looks as though it is full of openings, but there is high possibility that it is intentional. Most of the talented geniuses in the academy had bizarre quirks, and given how capable this Sun Laoshi was, he might be the same as well. Until now, they still found it hard to believe that there could be such a formidable teacher in Tianwu Academy. Upon seeing the other party's weak and bizarre footsteps, their first thought was that he was cultivating some powerful battle technique rather than something had happened to him. Look at this move. It seemed to be sighted toward the east, but it is actually a movement to the west. This must a high-level feint technique. This move also seems quite incredible. His kneecap suddenly caving in might make it seem as though he is falling down, but in truth, this is a good move to avoid an opponent's attack. I should give it a try later on. Just as they were complimenting the other party, they suddenly paused. The heck? Sun Laoshi has fallen into the latrine pit. Save him. The Sun Laoshi, who they were complimenting to the heavens a moment ago, had suddenly lost his balance and fallen into a latrine pit. Since there were public toilets in the academy, there were drainage systems for it as well. These drainage systems were located at the corner of the academy, far away from the official paths. As though drunk, Sun Laoshi's footsteps were wobbly and unstable. The duo thought that he was practicing some formidable battle technique, and never in their wildest dreams could they have imagined that he would suddenly fall into the drain. They quickly rushed forward and, enduring the stench, they fished him out. Zhao Wuxing and Lu Changyan stared at one another with faces burning red. They had just said confidently that Sun Laoshi was definitely practicing some powerful martial arts when he fell into the drainage pit. The heck, what was going on? For a teacher with such incredible understanding of cultivation techniques and battle techniques to fall into the fecal drain while walking despite witnessing the sight with their own eyes, they were still stumped. They couldn't comprehend the situation. Sun Laoshi, could it be that you are tired of living? After grabbing a few pails of water to wash up, Zhao Wuxing couldn't help but ask. Pooh. Upon hearing those words, Mo Hongyi's face immediately turned pale and spurted a mouthful of blood. Your head. Even if I am tired of living, I would at least choose some better location to jump. Have you seen anyone jumping into the fecal drain to commit suicide? Even if I wish to die, I won't degrade myself like that. I've been poisoned, alright. This kind of poison can numb one's mind, leaving one unable to control oneself. Otherwise, do you think that it is possible for me to fall in? It's fortunate that he was using his impersonated identity. Otherwise, if word were to spread around the kingdom that the genius Mo Hongyi had fallen into fecal drain, how could he meet anyone else in the future? Other than drinking a cup of tea at Zhang Xian's classroom this morning, I didn't do anything else. Despite his dismal, Mo Hongyi didn't dwell on his misfortune. Instead, he slowly inferred and deduced the situation. Upon waking up, he went straight to Zhang Xian's classroom, and while waiting for him, the only thing he consumed was a cup of tea. Could it be that the tea was poisoned? From the looks of it, that seemed highly probable. However, his arrival at the Lu Laoshir's classroom was opportune. It was impossible for the other party to bank his hopes on an uncertain factor. In other words, the other party's target was Master Teacher Zhang Xian. But who could it be? Who would be so daring as to lay his hands on a master teacher? Wait. Yesterday night, a thought suddenly flashed through his head, and he recalled the three figures he saw in Zhang Xian's classroom yesterday. All along, he had thought that they were the newly accepted students of Lu Cheng, so he didn't think much of it. Yet, in the 2 hours he spent in the classroom, he didn't see any of the trio. Despite not being Lu Cheng's students, they suddenly appeared in his classroom in the middle of the night. Could it be that they are Zhang Xian's student? Recalling the appearance of one of them, Mo Hongyi's mind suddenly jolted. He remembered where he had met them before. Back when Zhang Xian was taking the one-star master teacher examination, he had brought his students along. It's these students who allowed him to pass the House of Trust with a trust level of 85, breaking his own record. Back then, overwhelmed by astonishment, he only briefly glanced at their appearance. Thus, he didn't have a clear memory of their appearances. As such, the second time he met them, he only found their faces familiar. However, thinking about it now, that seemed to be the case. Zhang Xian's student had tried to drug Lu Cheng, and he accidentally took the other party's place. What the heck was this? Who in the world did I offend? It's one thing for those 2 female students of yours to cause such a huge ruckus throughout the capital, but on top of that, your remaining students even sneaked here to poison you. If they wish to poison you, so be it. But what does this have to do with me? Mo Hongyi felt a stifled feeling in his chest, and tears streamed down his face. Due to his talents, his name had induced awe through Tianwu Kingdom and even the neighboring kingdoms when he was just 5. No one dared to disrespect him, so when did he suffer such grievous injustice before? Mo's son Laoshi dropped into the fecal pit? Hearing Meng Tao's words, Zhang Xian nearly choked on his own saliva. That was Mo Hongyi, a Zhongshe realm pinnacle expert, one of the top 10 strongest cultivators in Tianwu Kingdom, the idol of countless young ladies. Yet, he fell into the fecal pit? What was going on? Yes. When I went out, I saw Zhao Wuxing and Lu Changyan helping him out. Teacher, you should hurry and take a look. Meng Tao urged him. Zhang Xian nodded and he swiftly walked out of the classroom. Walking around 200 meters, he saw a stiff Sun Laoshi lying on the floor, staring at him with a look of anguish. Lu Laoshi, could Sun Laoshi be tired of living? You should hurry up and talk him out of it. Upon seeing Zhang Xian, Zhao Wuxing and Lu Changyan stood up and clasped his fist. Tired of living? A bizarre expression was on Zhang Xian's face. In just 4 to 5 days, he managed to induce a trust level of 40 among his students with his disguised identity. He was currently filled with expectations to pass the 2-star master teacher examination, so how could he possibly be tired of living? Don't worry, let me take a look. Replying so, Zhang Xian walked up to Mo Hongyi. At this moment, the other party's face was pale, and a powerful stench was emanating from his body. His lips were quivering, and it seemed as though he was trying to say something but his body wouldn't listen to him. He is poisoned. Even without the Library of Heaven's Path, Zhang Xian could immediately tell what was going on. With a glance, he could tell that the other party was poison, and on top of that, it seemed to be rather similar to the effects of the dry earthen powder that someone laced his tea set with. You drank the tea in my classroom? Zhang Xian immediately understood the situation. The tea was laced with poison, and Mo Hongyi was acting abnormally. It was obvious that he had drunk the tea. Upon realizing this, Zhang Xian was tongue-tied. Dry earthen powder was a grade 2 pinnacle poison. Not only could it induce nausea and diarrhea and leave one completely weak, it would also numb one's nerves, leaving one unable to move one's body properly. This fellow was caught off guard. It was no wonder why he fell into the fecal drain. The poison concocted by poison masters were scentless and tasteless, making it nearly impossible to guard against. On top of that, even Zhongshe realm pinnacle experts, despite their strength, had no immunity to their poison either. This was the reason why poison masters were such a feared existence, and few were willing to come into contact with them. Furthermore, given how severe his symptoms were, he seemed to have consumed quite a lot of the poison. Probably around an entire bottle. Woo-woo. Upon hearing Zhang Xian deducing the matter accurately, Mo Hongyi tried to nod his head, but he was lacking the strength to do so. Thus, he could only whimper in response. Since you're poisoned, then we should find a way to treat you. I have two methods. One will require quite a bit of medicinal herbs, and it'll take 1 to 2 days. As for the other, I am confident that I can treat you by today. Which one do you choose? Zhang Xian gazed questioningly at Mo Hongyi. Mo Hongyi struggled to put out 2 fingers. The second one, is it? All right, nodding his head, Zhang Xian lifted up his hand. Pa! A powerful slap struck him. With eyes widened in disbelief, Mo Hongyi fainted. Chapter 369, Kong Shi admits a disciple, the student of the sage. Before passing out, Mo Hongyi's heart was filled with boundless resentment. I came to look for you out of goodwill, yet first, I was poisoned by your students, then, I ended up being knocked unconscious by your slap. How in the world did I offend you? Lu Laoshi, Zhao Wuxing and the others were perplexed as well. Ignoring their shocked gazes, Zhang Xian took out a few silver needles, and driving his jinqi, he pierced the needles at several acupoints of the other party. He had read about the dry earthen powder in some books before, so he knew about the symptoms and the treatment method. Under normal circumstances, one would have to concoct the antidote, and the entire process was lengthy and troublesome. However, if he were to use the silver needles and Heaven's Path jinqi, it could be solved in a matter of moments. However, his jinqi was extremely pure, so he couldn't allow any outsiders to learn of it. Mo Hongyi was a genius, and his cultivation realm also equaled his own. Instead of being stumped by his questions later on, Zhang Xian decided to knock him out first. Before long, more than a dozen of silver needles were pierced into the locations where the bulk of the poison aura was accumulated. Under the cleansing from Heaven's Path jinqi, the poison was absorbed by the silver needles, causing their surfaces to turn black. Mo Hongyi's pale face slowly alleviated, and traces of redness returned to it. Incredible, Zhao Wuxing and Lu Changyan stared at one another in shock. They had heard of Lu Laoshi's amazing feat of solving 19 questions on the wall of dilemma consecutively, making him the new guild leader of the Physician Guild. Even so, they didn't have a clear grasp of his abilities. Upon seeing it firsthand now, they finally realized how fearsome the capability of the other party was. Even without conducting a diagnosis, with just a few needles, he was able to heal the incapacitated Sun Laoshi. Compared to him, the physicians in the academy seemed like complete amateurs. You too, send Sun Laoshi back. He should wake up in about 2 hours. After finishing the acupuncture and confirming that the poison in the other party's body had been expelled, Zhang Xian instructed the duo. Grade 2 pinnacle poison was an extremely fearsome substance. Even if it was cleared from one's body, it would take a while before one could recover from its damage. Of course, if Zhang Xian were to infuse a little more Heaven's Path Xinqi into the other party's body, he should be able to wake up swiftly. However, he would be unable to explain away his Heaven's Path Xinqi that way. Yes. Zhao Wuxing and Lu Changyan quickly lifted Sun Laoshe and carried him to his classroom. Someone wants to poison me. Mo Hongyi only happened to be at that spot at the wrong timing and drank that drugged tea. Who is the one trying to kill me? Rubbing his glabella, Zhang Xian was stumped. He was currently Lu Cheng and he didn't remember offending anyone. Who in the world would go through so much trouble to procure such a valuable poison to kill him? Could it be those men from the physician guild? Were they unhappy that he had become the new guild leader? Zhang Xian immediately shook his head. Physicians were responsible for healing the injured and treating the sick, and those who choose this occupation carried compassion in their hearts. At the very least, they wouldn't resort to such lowly methods. Putting aside the fact that this dry earthen powder wasn't fatal, more importantly, if he were killed and the headquarters were to investigate this matter, the physician would stand to lose more than he had gained. After pondering for a long moment, Zhang Xian was unable to fathom who it was. Thus, he rubbed his glabella and decided not to be bothered about it anymore. Let's go to Lu Chang's dormitory. With Meng Tao leading the way, the duo soon arrived at the student dormitory. Rather than living with the other students, Lu Chong stayed in a storage room beside the dormitory. A typical room in the Tianwu Academy student dormitory consisted of 4 students. The reason why Lu Chong decided to stay there was because he was afraid of revealing his secrets in his sleep talk. The storage room was small and dirty, but he would be able to guard his secrets here. Lu Chong. Lu Chong. Why didn't you come to class today? Teacher is here to meet you. Walking to the door, Meng Tao nodded. There was no response. Getting, Zhang Xian's heart skipped a beat. Could this fellow have truly collapsed from the poison? Without any hesitation, Zhang Xian kicked open the door and walked in. The room was small, and all kinds of miscellaneous objects were placed here. However, it was packed properly, and at the very corner, there was a small bed where one could rest on. No one is here. The place was small, and with a brief glance, Zhang Xian could see that there was no one in here. Teacher Meng Tao noticed something, and he passed it over to Zhang Xian. It was an envelope, and written on it was, to Lu Laoshe. From the looks of it, he knew that Zhang Xian would look for him, so he made preparations beforehand. Zhang Xian swiftly tore open the envelope. There was just a line of words, and the meaning behind it was simple. Lu Laoshe, pardon your unfilial student, but I can't abandon my vengeance for my parents and kin. Please don't look for me. He went to exact vengeance. Zhang Xian frowned. He knew that Lu Chong was carrying a huge burden in his heart, and there wasn't a single day that he didn't think about exacting vengeance on his enemies. Even so, to rush over as soon as his poison body was successfully cultivated, wasn't he being a little too anxious? Even so, Zhang Xian could understand his impulse. How could a person allow the murderer of his family and relatives to get away scot-free? He had toiled silently for 2 years just for this, and upon seeing his goal right before him, how could he remain seated? Just that, I wonder who his enemy is. Afraid of implicating him, Lu Chong had never revealed who his enemy was. Even though Zhang Xian wanted to look for Lu Chong, he didn't have any idea where he should start from. Pay close attention to the movements in Tianwu Royal City these few days. If anyone is killed or there's any sort of uproar, notify me immediately. Zhang Xian instructed. Those students of his came from distinguished families. Alone, Zhang Xian might be unable to find anything, but through their connections, he should be able to get some news soon. Since Lu Chong was going as far as to feign mute, there was a high probability that his enemy was in the capital, and he possessed a high standing at that. Thus, if he were to make his move, it would surely cause a huge commotion. By then, it shouldn't be a problem to find him. Reckless. Zhang Xian shook his head. He was just thinking of imparting the other party a battle technique after he had finished cultivating his poison body to increase his chances of winning. Who knew that the other party would leave as soon as he was done, not even greeting him at that? Despite his composed nature, he sure acted rashly. Actually, Zhang Xian knew that Lu Chong was doing this because he didn't want to implicate him. If Zhang Xian were to find out about it, he would surely interfere in his matters. Even more so, if he were to meet in danger, there was a high possibility that Zhang Xian would stand up for him. If so, Zhang Xian would be implicated to this matter as well. In order not to bring harm to his respected teacher, he chose to depart by his own, leaving behind just a letter. This fellow may be young, but he sure had a lot of thoughts. Let's return to the classroom first. Sighing, Zhang Xian started walking back toward the classroom. Even though he felt that the fellow was acting too rashly, Zhang Xian felt moved by his gesture. Teacher and student. What makes a teacher? What makes a student? Zhang Xian contemplated as he walked. Ever since his transcension, he had been accepting students and teaching them for his own motives. He was earnest in his job as a teacher, and the knowledge he imparted was also carefully selected with the welfare of his students at heart, but in truth, from the very start until now, he hadn't been able to understand the true meaning behind a teacher. It was just like a pair of young parents. They might shower unconditional love and concern for their child, but the notion of being a parent was still blurred in them. Zhang Xian was only a librarian of a high school in his previous life, so he wasn't a teacher in the truest sense. Even though he had accepted quite a few students, his time with them hadn't been long, and he was plagued with many other affairs as well. Somehow, Lu Chong's actions had unwittingly struck a chord in his heart. Does imparting knowledge make a teacher? Does accepting knowledge make a student? That's not it. Being a teacher isn't that simple, and being a student isn't that easy. The interactions he had with Xiaoya, Mu Xueqing, Lu Chong, and all of his other students slowly trickled through his mind, and gradually, the fog veiling Zhang Xian's mind gradually cleared. Its camaraderie, its responsibility, its interdependence, its boom. After a seemingly long yet short period of time, Zhang Xian suddenly felt everything before him clearing it. It seemed as though something blocked him had been removed, and he felt enlightened. Then, a powerful energy shaped as though countless lines descended from the skies and seeped into Zhang Xian's head, causing his mind to become clearer and richer. Don't allow anyone to interrupt me, I am going into seclusion. Sensing the change in his state of mind, Zhang Xian could no longer hold himself back. After instructing Meng Tao, he walked into the mini-tutoring room and sat down. Master-teacher pavilion. Father, I'm speaking the truth. That Lu Qing Laoshe really guided Apothecary Mu to forge a grade 4 pill. Jiang Chen looked at this father, who was seated a short distance away from him. The sight yesterday was too shocking that he had yet to recover from it even now. After looking through numerous books, he realized the impossibility of guiding a 2-star apothecary to forge a grade 4 pill. In any case, it wasn't something that could be explained by possessing absolute knowledge in medicinal herbs. In other words, that Lu Laoshe was likely to be an apothecary, an extremely skilled one at that. Okay, I believe you. Pavilion Master Jiang nodded. He already knew that this senior of his possessed pill forging skills far beyond others. Even so, this feat was still beyond his expectations. Father, tell me the truth. Is Lu Laoshe related to senior uncle Zhang? Seeing that his father was nonchalant, Jiang Chen raised his doubts. Jiang Chen had been harboring this doubt since yesterday. Zhang Shi was skilled in pill forging, and so was Lu Laoshe. The day that Zhang Shi disappeared for the 2-star master-teacher mission, Lu Laoshi appeared. The coincidences between these two absolute geniuses couldn't help but make him consider this possibility. Seeing that his son was getting doubtful, Pavilion Master Jiang opened his mouth to speak, but he suddenly paused and his face warped in shock. What? He wasn't the only one. Jiang Chen was dumbstruck as well. It's the teacher acknowledgement hall. Pavilion Master Jiang quickly dashed out, and Jiang Chen followed closely behind. After leaving the residence, he realized that all of the master teachers had been alarmed, and they were all headed anxiously for the teacher acknowledgement hall. The teacher acknowledgement hall was where master teachers were given their emblem and officially acknowledged. After passing the examination, the new master teachers were to apply for their emblems here, pay respects to Kong Shi, and request for the acknowledgement of the master teacher pavilion. It was similar to how normal clans paid respect to their ancestors. As for the question symposium, it was more like a public declaration of one's identity after one was acknowledged in the teacher acknowledgement hall. However, Zhang Xian had applied for the 2-star master teacher examination right after passing the first examination, so he hadn't had the chance to come here yet. Many master teachers arrived at the teacher acknowledgement hall at the same time, and they lifted their heads to take a look. The innumerable memorial tablets of the predecessors were shaking non-stop, as though an earthquake was going on. Put-ong! 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 One after another, the memorial tablets fell over. Trembling of myriad tablets, this is, Celestial Master Teacher. Pavilion Master Zhang's lips quivered. That isn't just the case. Pavilion Master, look, a master teacher pointed at a direction. Hearing those words, Pavilion Master Jiang and the others immediately looked over. At the center of the room, Kong Shi's statue was trembling slightly non-stop as well. This is Kong Shi admits a disciple, the student of the sage. Pavilion Master Jiang exclaimed. But before they could even finish their sentence, Kong Shi's statue suddenly stopped trembling and with a sudden jolt, Kacha! A crack running down the middle of the statue appeared. Upon seeing this sight, everyone was once again stunned. Pavilion Master Zhang's eyes widened to their limits. This is, Kong Shi wishes to admit a disciple, but he was rejected. Complete silence. Everyone looked as though they had just seen a ghost. Since a teacher could choose his student, a student could choose his teacher as well. Therefore, even if Kong Shi was considered as the teacher of all beings and was respectfully addressed as the Empyrean, he still had to ask for the other party's permission when intending to admit him as his disciple. If the other party was unwilling, he couldn't force himself on the other party either. The shaking of the statue had meant that Kong Shi was willing to accept the other party as his disciple, but its subsequent fracture meant that the other party had rejected him. Rejecting the opportunity to become Kong Shi's student. The heck? Who in the world is this formidable person? To refuse the offer to become the student of the greatest man in the world, could you be any more arrogant than that? In the small classroom, Zhang Xian's mind was operating at high intensity as he tried his best to absorb the unique energy that descended from the skies. These slivers of energy seemed to fuse perfectly with his soul, causing his eyes to become clearer. It is increasing my soul depth. Having read the books in the Master Teacher Pavilion, Zhang Xian understood what was going on. This was neither spiritual energy nor Jinqi, this was insight energy. All that wished to become a master teacher had to possess the state of insight will of mind. And to raise one's will of mind's soul depth, one had to absorb this kind of unique insight energy. Back then, the enlightenment jade that Zhaoya's father gave him possessed this kind of energy, and it was through absorbing it that he managed to recover his soul depth back to 0. 1. Absorb. Even though Zhang Xian was surprised by the sudden appearance of the insight energy, he showed no indication of wanting to stop at all. Since he had attained his previous soul depth level with the help of the golden pages instead of cultivating his soul through the cultivation of a secret manual, he had never seen or absorbed insight energy before. Even so, he knew how precious it was. To master teachers, it was definitely a priceless treasure. Tzzzzzz. As Zhang Xian absorbed the insight energy that descended from the skies, his soul depth slowly inched forward. After an unknown period of time, his body jolted, and he came to a stop. There's nothing left. Looking around, Zhang Xian knew that he had absorbed the final sliver of the energy that had fallen and exhaled deeply. With a flick of his wrist, a stone of insight appeared in his hands. He immediately got into the state of heart of tranquil water. Numbers appeared on the stone. 11, 1. Despite absorbing for so long, my soul depth only increased by 1. 0. Zhang Xian pouted. He had thought that his soul depth would increase significantly after absorbing so much insight energy. At the very least, it would increase by 8 or 10. Yet, betraying his expectations, it only raised by 1. 0. This was way too little. If anyone else were to know of his thoughts, they would definitely rush forward to strangle him. To raise a mere 0. 1 soul depth, others had to endure all kinds of hell, toiling in extreme cold and heat just to train their mind. In contrast, he had gained this 1. 0 soul depth in a single go, yet he wasn't satisfied of course. If they knew that he could raise his soul depth by 5. 0 using the golden page, they would definitely think otherwise. Zhang Xian shook the dismal in his head away and slowly opened his eyes. String after string of insight energy flowed in his eyes, allowing him to peer through the fabric of the world to see its very essence. Glancing at a saber on the weapon rack, he saw a faint apparition striking on a lump of metal, slowly shaping it. With just a single look, he could see the forging process of the saber, its tear, as well as its flaws. Not too far away, behind a table, there was an apparition of a towering tree. The tree was hacked down and worked on by craftsmen. A name appeared in his mind, causing Zhang Xian's eyes to widen and his fists to clench tightly together. Eye of Insight. It was said that formidable master teachers could expend their soul depth to activate their Eye of Insight to peer into the essence of matter, the strengths and weaknesses of battle techniques as well as cultivation techniques. It was just like how even Jizuan experts were unable to notice his original face under the human mask of Lu Cheng, but those who possessed the Eye of Insight could see through it in an instant and peer at the original appearance of the person. This was precisely the reason why high-tiered master teachers were fearsome existences. With just a single look, they could see through the problems and ailments of a person, and guide them to resolve it. Despite that, I thought that only 6-star master teachers are able to comprehend this technique. What's going on? After checking the details of the Eye of Insight in the books, Zhang Xian felt bewildered. According to the records, only 6-star master teachers possessed the strength to comprehend this powerful talent. How could he possess it when he wasn't even a 2-star master teacher? Boom! Just as he was pondering over this matter, the sight before him blurred, and his consciousness seemed to have been pulled by an overwhelming strength reminiscent of a vast ocean into a chaotic dimension. Then, an elder with a snow-white beard walked over and a compassionate voice sounded in Zhang Xian's head. I wish to take you in as my disciple, do you accept? You want to take me in as your disciple? Zhang Xian was taken aback. Then, he quickly shook his head and said, I refuse. What a joke. Possessing the library of Heaven's Path, he was able to see through the flaws of everything with a look. From his perspective, there was no need for him to acknowledge any teacher at all. Could 4-star to 5-star master teachers conjure theories that surpassed that of the library of Heaven's Path? In terms of cultivation, was there any technique that could surpass the Heaven's Path divine art? Besides, the other party had invaded his mind without any forewarning. Who knew whether he bore malicious intents? It was better to be safe than sorry. After all, it was just a moment ago that someone spiked his tea. Who? As soon as he replied the other party, his body jolted once more, and he realized that he was still in the mini tutoring room. He hadn't gone anywhere, and the sight just now seemed nothing more than a dream. An illusion formation? No, there can't be any formation here. Otherwise, the Library of Heaven's Path would have detected it. Could it be something similar to the trust crystal? Zhang Xian thought. The trust level test was something similar to what he had experienced. One's mental state would be sent into an illusion, and they would undergo various events so as to test their compatibility with their teacher. Could he had just met with something similar? Otherwise, how could some old geezer just appear and ask to take him in as his student? What in the hell is this? If you wish to take me as your disciple, you should at least name yourself. To put me into this kind of illusion without any warning, aren't you being inconsiderate? Harumphing coldly, he immediately labeled that elder as shameless. Of course, if you were to know that the elder was Empyrean Kong Shi, and if he had agreed to become the other party's student, his identity and standing would rise exponentially. Would he spew blood and die straight from disappointment? Even if I don't take the examinations now, I am already a recognized master teacher. No one will be able to refute that. Ignoring that inconsiderate old geezer, Zhang Xian hid his eye of insight and clenched his fists excitedly. After reading through the books, he knew that he had unintentionally comprehended the true meaning of teacher and student, and from there, he was recognized by the heavens, becoming a celestial master teacher. In other words, even if he didn't take any examination, no one would be able to refute his standing as an official master teacher. There was already no need for him to continue his impersonation. However, the title of a celestial master teacher is too conspicuous. I should take the examination as per normal. Anyway, I am just lacking the final step. Even though Zhang Xian was excited, he knew that it was best to keep it to himself. Celestial Master Teacher was a huge affair. If word were to spread, he might face quite a lot of trouble. Keeping a low profile was the way to go. No matter what others say, I, Zhang Xian, have always been a low-profile person. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.